but dating apps is always, dating apps are like lottery tickets. It's like, even if the guy thinks that he has no chance, there's still a good, that you go on an app and then they say, 47 women have swiped left on you. Do you want to find out who they are? Pay $50 to find out, like no matter how badly you think of yourself, the fact that this app tells you that there's somebody out there that is interested in you means that you're going to spend every now and then. And you're going to try because you do have medium-sized balls.
Yeah.
So
nice. Thanks for the reminder.
Biological reminder.
So I think... Before we begin the podcast, have you gotten your free ebook? It's called the Build a Six-Figure Portfolio Guidebook. Now, inside it, we share with you the tips and tricks to bring your stock investing skills to the next level. The best part, it's only 10 pages long and it's totally free. Whether you're on Spotify or YouTube, the link to download is in the description, or you can go to www.firl.co/FREE or www.firl.co/free. Hello everyone, welcome back to the FIRL podcast. Today we have Jonathan Choi back with us.
Yep.
Welcome.
Choivo.
great to go
Choivo.
back.
Yeah, if people know his blog, Choivo.
Yes. So before we go into that, I have to ask, right, like, what made you decide to shave the hair?
Botak.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not botak lah, but enough.
But it was botak, right? Was it?
I was completely botak, and I think I'll probably go botak again soon.
Uh-huh.
But basically, I have a feeling that every girl in the world secretly wants to go bald,
Okay.
if not for the lack
Girl?
of beauty aspects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because like, I went bald because at first I was having some itching, whatever.
I see.
But the moment I went bald, it was a revelation in terms of the experience, because your head just feels this intense lightness and the air just flows around your head. And I was thinking to myself, if I had just a normal amount of male hair, maybe like around Ming Jie's amount of hair, and I go bald and I feel that, how would a girl with like long hair feel if she ever goes bald? And like when I was first about to shave bald, I think I had my girlfriend help me shave bald. Actually, we might go into Xiaomi after this. But
The hair clipper, right?
yeah, but I had my girlfriend shave me bald. Like the first time she was about to shave me bald, I kept stopping her arm multiple times, because you're like, I kind of, maybe I want to still go out and see people, But after you go bald once, then you're kind of like, wow, this is an incredible experience. So yeah, and then your hair washing is just like one drop of soap, and then you just wipe one time and it's done.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's I love it. It's fantastic.
Well, it was just suddenly you just
Yeah,
felt
and
like,
also the thing was that I like when I was working for a GLC, I didn't mind leaving my hair long because I wanted to see people anyway. But when I started working for myself, it's kind of weird. Like the moment you work for yourself, it's more like you now have the freedom to work 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
because and then so I found that my long hair was just distracting me.
I see.
And then I had a beard also, and then the beard was also distracting me because I kept like plucking at it while I worked. On my hair, I'll be like that. So I just went and shaved bald completely, and then focus went up.
Okay.
So yeah, helps you make money.
Okay. I thought it was more for like a cancer cause or something that
I thought you wanted to become Buddha.
I should have been smart enough to say it's for a cancer cause, right?
Yeah, that's what most people do, right?
Yeah, just like improve my social image completely.
So the last time we met, you were still working at a GLC, I believe.
Yeah.
And you were writing on your blog. So what's the life update right now?
Well, so my blog has been abandoned a little bit.
Okay.
Not to say abandoned, is like I don't post anymore or much. So basically after we wrote, I think I attended my resignation, and my last day was sometime around June.
Okay.
So I basically spoke to my boss, because prior to that I had a very bad car accident, which, to be fair, after the accident I should not be here.
Ah.
Like, to be very frank, I should not be here. Like,
Okay.
like I should be dead there and then, because for just to give you guys a sense, I was around. I had a car crash on the NSC highway at around heavy rain, and I was traveling at least 140
Okay.
on just very very foolish. So my car had like 4 different types of secondhand tires. Yeah, so you're like, I would expect you to be dead, right? And then car crashed, then flew up the hill, then rolled down, and then all that kind of just very fun stuff, like all the windows all burst,
Okay.
all kind of stuff. So after that, I was like, you know what, I should be dead. So I thought to myself, you know what, I'm gonna try and put my life in because now because I'm theoretically supposed to be dead then. So whatever now is free. So I should live my life a lot more towards what I think should be done. So I thought to myself, I'm gonna resign. I talked to my boss. I say I'll handle all the difficult things first. Let me handle all the difficult things for you first, and then after it's done, I will resign. Then you guys can slowly hand over and stuff like that. So I resigned, and then it was around maybe a few months prior that I started talking with Choi.
Okay.
Which you guys, I think, were on this podcast before.
Yes.
So initially he was, saying, I would like to give you a certain amount of money to manage from his own personal or whatever, because that's really the only way that you can judge someone for their ability. Give them a certain amount of money to manage and then give them around 5 years. So he according to him, he's read some of my stuff on and off over the last few years. And then he felt, well, let's figure out this guy. So at first we were thinking of working as partners. So just, as a sounding board, etc. So, and then over the course of like 1, 2, 3 months, as I was discussing with him, I just realized that this guy is just better than me. I mean, thought process wise, much better than me, decision making better, experience better, understanding all just better. So I thought to myself, no matter what, I would like to work with this guy. So we discussed about it, but then after I resigned, even though 2020 was a really good year for me financially, after, there's Nassim Nicholas Taleb has said this beautiful phrase. He says there's the 3 most addictive things in the world: cocaine, sugar, and a steady paycheck.
Yes.
Yep.
So I had a very nice steady paycheck. I mean, maybe not to say very nice, but it's a nice steady paycheck. So for me, I would never be able to accept if I had to withdraw money from my own fund for my own life expenses. So I thought to myself, so I told Sechai, can I ask for a favor? Can you give me like a nominal salary that can cover my living expenses? And then, even if I don't have that salary, I would still be very happy to work with you. Okay, but since now I'm in this stage where I would like a nominal salary, that'll be great. So he agreed, and then so that's where we are today. Also, I'm currently working for him in his fund, but it's I would say it's hard to but we meet maybe like once a week, so it's there's a lot of freedom despite working for someone. But end of the day, it's just that we both trust that I know what I'm supposed to do, and even without him, I think I'll be still working at the similar level. So it doesn't really make a difference. So so the initial reason why I started my blog was because back then I just didn't really know how to get into investment funds. To be fair, I should have just went up to the doors and just start knocking, but I didn't do that. So I started this blog instead because I figured, at some point people will read that and then they will, think to myself, what, let's try and work together with this guy. And I suppose after 2020, that kind of happened. And then even with 1 or 2 other fund managers. So now it's more of there's just very little incentive for me to write things out again, other than on occasion, because my time, I suppose, is more efficiently spent if I were to just take it and continue to read.
So I mean, like, how has 2021 been for you in terms of like your investments and all of that? And like, what are some of the big things that you've learned and all that?
So 2021, the start of the year was quite okay. But after that, I just stopped all my trading activities, mainly just stick to long-term investing. So 2021 was a year when I really tried to understand the e-commerce space, but as well as the Chinese space. So far, I would say, at least for e-commerce, we are done with the understanding part in terms of all the global competitors. But like for China, there's still a long way to go. So the thing I would say is that, so given from that, you can kind of understand e-commerce and China. If I started investing in the middle of the year, it won't be so good.
Yep.
So the thing is that, well, let's just say that for me, I was impacted a bit, but the fund, for example, the fund I work for was not so impacted. So there was a lot of process where I had to think through a lot of my thought process when it comes to allocation and how do I allocate, etc. But I would say that, for example, I think Baba was a significant position. It was. I don't think the loss is enough to turn into is enough to bring the fund down to a negative return this year. But I bought Baba right after I finished studying Baba. But here's the problem. I bought it after I finished studying Baba and not when I finished studying everything. Okay.
So why is that important?
So I would say that my understanding of the e-commerce space globally now is very, and as well as for the Chinese perspective, is very different from when I first studied Baba. So when I first studied Baba, and that's coming from like studying Malaysian companies all the time, suddenly Alibaba looks like just an angel, you know? Like it's the most perfect girl, not perfect girl, is an amazing girl in comparison to every investment that I've seen so far, but it's nothing, but there were some flaws that I kept thinking about. But after I finished all the Chinese companies that are related to e-commerce, as well as, well, if you understand e-commerce, you also have to understand the logistics business, everything behind it.
Fulfillment, everything.
Yeah. So I went through all of the logistic companies in China, basically all of them. And then after we went through also some Brazilian ones, because that's the only one that was really listed globally. Yeah. And then there's C Limited, all this. So after you went through all of them, you start to realize that Baba might actually be, in terms of management, slightly below average if you compare with the rest of those level of management.
The big ones,
Yes. It's so messed up to say something like that because their management is actually incredibly good. It's just that compared to these guys, and then also you need to know the Choivo and ByteDance, these guys in e-commerce.
Yeah.
And the e-commerce industry in China is, I think, at least 15 years ahead of everyone because there's just too many intelligent people in there just moving things forward all the time. That it's very difficult to actually determine who will win in the end. I think, there are a few companies that you think have a good odds to win in the end. But even then, they're not going to really, really win. Like, they're going to win a decent percentage. But like, I think the cream of the cream still in the end belongs to the e-commerce, not to say e-commerce live streamers, or I feel like the top e-commerce live streamers, those guys actually make the most perfect amount of profits in terms of margins.
Actually, there was a documentary about this. I don't know whether you watched. The ones that they talk about the life of the influencers or the
live streamers.
The live streamers in China. It was quite sad because every year they would have to win competitions and then they would have to
look good.
I can go on forever.
Oh my God. I was like watching it. I was like looking at it. I was like, my God, it's quite a sad life, to be honest.
Live streaming is actually a very interesting business because, so for example, I was trying to understand live streaming as a business in general. So, I mean, obviously, until today, Twitch is not making money. So I was thinking to myself, like, what are is live streaming platforms like historically loss-making business, one? And number two, what is a success factor for a live streaming business? And number three, in the live streaming industry, who makes the above average profits?
Correct.
So if you think about the live streaming business, there are three components to it. So first is the live streamers. The second is the platform. And then the third is the live streaming agencies. Okay. So now, if you look at live streaming platforms, you will notice that the first question I asked myself was that, number one, why is there live streaming platforms other than Twitch and the 2 or 3 Chinese ones, which is like Huya and Douyu? Why are there more than 3?
Yeah.
Because you see, there's a lot more live streaming platforms like Alive or Bigo or just or Momo, and then just a multitude of like all these small ones that for some reason is very popular in Indonesia and Thailand. Like Indonesia have their own just weird little live streaming platform that I can't remember the name. But if I'm not mistaken, it's owned by Momo. And then there's YY, which is Bigo, and then so etc. etc. Now the thing I noticed is that those a lot of live streaming platforms that make money are so now if you were to look at it from, let's say, Huya and Douyu, you'll be wondering to yourself, how come their margins are so low? When you look at, let's say, Momo, their margins are so much higher, although their growth might not be as extreme. And then you realize that if, let's say, you were to do gaming live streams, what they do is that, okay, I'm a gaming live stream, so what I need to do is that I need to host. I need to make sure I'm the broadcaster for the tournaments. Okay, so let's say I can't remember what's the PUBG and then all this LOL, all these tournaments. But the thing is, live streaming, like getting the broadcasting rights for those tournaments is like extremely expensive, and it'll probably make you lose money. Actually. So, but if you look at, let's say, Pico or all these like YY or all this, or Momo, they are actually very profitable. So that got me thinking, okay, so in terms of live streaming, you want the platforms that in general don't want to be paying the tournament money. That's one. And then the second part about live streaming is that there are different tiers of live streamers. Okay. So the very top tier, you have your Weiya, and then the lipstick king of China that can sell obscene amounts. And then of course there are the other top tier live streamers in China that can probably do like 1 million viewers every single time they come on. Again, those guys, you're not going to make money from them because they get to negotiate their terms, etc.
Correct.
So the only people that you make money from actually is the middle to bottom tier streamers. Okay. So now middle to bottom tier will be somebody who only has, like, let's say 500 to 1,000 viewers, maybe 1,005, 2,000 viewers. And then also the micro ones, which have 20, 30 viewers. So now, obviously, a lot of apps are coming up with streaming as a way to monetize because it's such a good way. But there are some platforms that have died. But so I started to try and wanted to figure out, like, how much would a micro live streamer make, and then how much would a middle tier?
Would you consider live streaming yourself?
I'm not sure if my face is like and conductive, but also it's just I don't know how lucrative a live facing the camera is for somebody like doing, like, let's say, doing my line of work. So for example, if Warren Buffett decided to live stream, I'm sure he'll make a lot of money, But I remember there was this guy who live streamed himself just sitting there studying, and that was his video only.
Yep.
I suppose I could consider doing something like that. Like, you just live stream me, just sit down in the chair and just like study. But the problem is I don't like, for me, the only reason I would live stream is that maybe as a way to filter out and find some people who see the value in that, and then they can also provide me the value by giving me ideas and be like, as I study this, they'll be like, by the way, you need to, figure out something. But the thing is that the people like that usually don't sit down all day and watch live streams anyway.
Yeah.
So, it's like, the chances of John sitting in front of maybe he does watch like girls and then like just pay the give tips.
Be a sim. Maybe we should start a podcast
Actually,
on that.
really rich, from what I understand, really rich guys, right, who have like rich parents. They're 18, 19, they've never had a girlfriend before. They actually pay like big amount of money. And they are totally fine if the girl never goes out with him, never even talks to him. No, actually, sorry. Some of them, they are like the really good streamers. They actually send like gifts to the high-paying donors. But that's about it. That's the extent of it.
This is going to go into another topic.
So we shall not.
Dating apps. I was studying dating apps crazy. Okay, but now let's stick to live streamers first. so I wanted to understand to myself, like in Malaysia at least, like I found a few, because I was talking with a friend and he was like, actually, I also got watch live streamers. And I was like, okay, tell me a few that you watch. Now after I watched them, then they were like 20, they have like only 20 viewers at any point in time.
Wow.
Okay, but she's a very pretty girl, 18-year-old from Ipoh. Incredible.
What does she sell? Anything?
Her face.
Oh, just her face.
Okay.
So she just sits there and then she sells human attention by a very attractive female. So that's what she sells, which is really, really valuable apparently. Not apparently, I mean, once you understand it itself. So apparently she makes, from what I can see, around 10,000 ringgit a month. So just live streaming maybe 4 or 5 times a week in front of 20 people for like 10 hours. So just fresh, not even fresh out of college, like while being just after high school. But I suppose you could do it from the age of 15, you can make this kind of money. So Now, but the problem with like streamers like her is that number one, you only have like 20, like you only have, let's say, a few hundred followers, and then you only have like these 20, 30 guys who pop on every time you live stream. So they are not the kind of people that are gonna change platform just because they want to. So she uses Earl Alive. But Earl Alive, even you would not have heard of it. Like if I tell you Huya Douyun, you would have heard of it. Or even Momo or ByteDance Kuaishou, you have heard of it.
Yeah.
But not Earl Alive. So how did they choose Earl Alive? So a lot of it for them, they say, oh, I saw an ad for it, and then I thought to myself, why not I try? And then I tried this, so my friends say, oh, I want to try it also. So they introduce their friends, and then their friends like, oh, what platform you use? Earl Alive. So I use Earl Alive. Now, so these guys are actually not going to jump.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you think about it from this perspective, then you think to yourself, okay, so what you want for a success factor as for investments into these platforms is that you want the guys who have the largest access to these medium tier and small streamers, and then a lot of men will want to visit them and get that human attention. So I was thinking to myself, which platforms would do this best? So I actually have no idea what's the right answer. Like, would it be like Momo? Where Momo is one of the biggest dating apps in China. And then they also own Tantan, which now you can find live streamers there as well.
Yep.
So you get lonely men swiping left and swiping right, and then they go into the platform. So that sounds like a really good way to really lock in this, middle to low live streamers. But then what about Kuaishou or Douyin? So Kuaishou and Douyin, those guys are mainly going into the e-commerce side. So they say, okay, these e-commerce guys that you sell on my platform, and then I will make a certain small amount each time people buy. But obviously, this is only for the small and medium. The big guys like VR or the Lipstick King, he's not going. Whatever you're charging them, you're gonna get like 10% of what you were charging them, lah. So in fact, you might actually lose money just from the server cost, all that. But you need them around. But the problem is that having them around, I'm actually not sure if it's good for your business or not, because the people who want to watch VR are very unlikely for them to go and be like, oh, okay, VR's done, let me go and watch some, 50 streamer guy and then figure it out. So yeah. And also apparently, like, Twitch is not number one in the rest of the world, because Twitch, if you look at how they do their broadcast, it's their broadcast recommendations is very bad. So it's very, they don't recommend the small streamers at all. It's only the bigger streamers. Well, if you look at, let's say, Momo or Tantan or Pico, they tend to recommend the middle end streamers as well.
I see.
It's very similar to TikTok, right? I think
Yeah.
TikTok also actively tries to promote smaller guys.
TikTok, I can't answer on TikTok because it's so hard to find anything substantive on TikTok, because people don't actually like go and, you don't actually get an ex-TikToker, software developer come out and say, yes, this is exactly how we do our recommendations engines. But obviously TikTok, they found a way to do the recommendation. Like TikTok, I think is not so much that how many viewers a person has. They probably have a sense of, their AI probably is really good at determining which videos are going to go viral based on initial impressions. And then they make sure that those videos get into the people who are interested in watching them. So but in terms of their live streaming platform, I'm not too sure, because it's actually quite hard for me to go into these Chinese live streaming platforms, because like for example, Douyin, I still can't install it properly for some reason. I can install TikTok properly.
Because you're on Apple ecosystem, right?
Yeah, I don't know why it's so difficult for me to install like a proper Douyin, a Chinese one. I want a Chinese one, but I don't know why it's so hard for me, because China, when you sign up for something, they want your number, and then they're gonna. I don't know why until now I still have a problem getting the tag for all this kind of like China apps. So that's one problem.
I see.
So coming from these live streaming platforms, you then go into like dating apps. Now, the cheapest dating app in the world right now that is just, the price is unthinkable, is Momo, because it's the biggest dating app in China, and it's trading for like 3 times earnings today. And they're putting all their operating cash flows to buy back stock. So now, but the world of dating apps is that, there's a few things to note. So obviously we are aware that the human race has evolved a lot slower than technology has evolved. So our primal brains are still stuck probably back in year 300, 400, 500 years ago. So if you look at the dating world today, so when Momo first came out as an app, people called it a superpower. Okay, because the Momo dating apps. Because what happened was that previously, if you think about, let's say you're a really charming guy, okay? for you to go and men, if you study like the anthropology as well as like what kind of animal is more towards monogamous and what type of animal is more towards polygamous.
R&K selection, right?
Yeah. So oftentimes you can tie it to the size of the testicles.
Nice.
Okay. So small testicles tend to be very monogamous, while humongous testicles tend to, like baboons, tend to be humongously polyamorous. So humans are right in the middle. So we are right about we have inclinations to be polygamous, but we also kind of want to be monogamous. So now what happens is that these guys, suddenly their dating activities can be scaled. So they no longer need to be a celebrity in order to scale their charmingness, you see. They can now instantly be charming towards 30 women or whatever, and at the same time. And then because of that, just by the law of large numbers, you're going to, I suppose, what's the phrase? Get laid more. So a lot of the men that were successful called it a super weapon. Now, so the thing is, what happened is that if you look at what's the dating.com, I can't remember who owns Tinder now, but they're
Match.com, right?
Match.com, yes. Match.com owns Tinder. When they showed their prospectus. If I'm not mistaken, 2014 was the year when people met more online versus, let's say, all the other methods, which is friends, go to church or, colleagues, whatever. Dating online exceeded 50% in something like 2014. So by today, if I'm being very honest, I'm fairly certain the number of people who find their partners via dating platforms now is easily 70 to 80%. Now, the problem here is this. So the first part is this. Now, on dating platforms, it's a kind of platform where they favor the men who, number one, it would be better if you're good looking. But number two is also somebody who is like actually want to take a lot of time to put into their social media, into curating a selection of pictures to go and to select for females, etc. So that females can self-select them. But the problem is very few men in the world are interested in doing this.
Yep.
So even if you go to before this, if you look back towards the ancestors that you have, you have 2 times more females than males in your ancestors. War, right? Not just war. But because on average, 50% of males do not get to procreate and pass their genes down.
Yeah, that's right.
That's just that's, like for example, the baboon is humongously polygamous, and the baboons, female ones, they are humongously unselective towards males. They will literally sleep with anything and everything when they are in heat, you see. So it's very common for like the beta males of that to try and sneak into the female baboon when she's on heat and then try to sleep with her. And then the female baboon will sleep with the guy, and then when the guy gets found out by the alpha male, he'll get ripped to pieces and stuff like that. But it doesn't change the fact that the female baboons are unselective. Now, what happens is that when your females are highly unselective, that means that your genetic pool does not improve. But if you look at our female pool, they are clearly extremely selective.
Correct.
So they are less selective towards look, but they are very selective towards intelligence, social, how do I put it?
Social status.
Social status is a huge one. So, etc., etc. So the pickiness of our females resulted in human race being here today. So, Now, so what happened with the dating apps is that if you look at people did a study on the dating apps, swipe strikes and swipe lefts, 80% of males do not get swiped much, while 20% of males get swiped a lot, and the top 5% just get swiped all the time as if they're a girl. So what happens is, what's happening here is that 80% of women are trying to aim towards 20% of the men, which is just nature. And if you were to proportionate to 1 and 5%, all that, it will be even more extreme. But 80% of the men then are then aiming for the remaining 20% of the girls. Now, even before this, we're already looking at 2 to 1, that means 50%. So now the differences become even much more extreme. So now, if you go back in time, you can go and search, for example, keywords that people search into Google. Okay. Now, when you look at the start of Google, the phrase "how to get a girlfriend" was steadily marching up.
I see.
That was until 2014 when the phrase "how to get a girlfriend" started to trend down a lot. Men just stopped giving men gradually stopped caring about finding a girlfriend. And if you look at the other end of the spectrum, this phrase comes out MGTOW, which is men going their own way. So men going their own way is basically men who go, you know what? I can't get a woman. It's too difficult. So I'm not going to bother with getting a woman. Okay. So this thing actually exceeded how to get a girlfriend. Okay. So now what's happened? Now why did this happen? Because number one, this Tinder thing or dating platforms just made the inequality even bigger. But the worst thing for these men is that they discovered how easy it is for the top 5% of men, or even the top 5% of men, where just 2 texts from them is needed to get the girl out on a date. And then these men constantly share about how they can have sex with the girl on the first date. So if you look at Tinder, like let's say in 2014 and you go on Tinder now, the female experience is very different. Because on 2014, when you go on Tinder, the guy will actually try and talk. But now, because these guys will be like, okay, these really successful men don't need to say much words. They can just go on, use very sexual straight away. So why not I copy them? And then suddenly, because they're copying these guys, the female experience is more like, oh, everyone's very sexual towards me, even though they are very unattractive. And then the second part is this. These guys, when they see the other man can get it within like 2 dates or less than 1 date, they think to themselves, is this girl like, like taking advantage of me if they say they're 3 dates in? Like, for example, I know like this old guy, he told me he met his wife, she was a bank teller. And so he went to the bank every single day for like 2 months to get her. It's never going to happen today. There's no way on earth. Because the guy will just feel like, I'm such a piece of shit. Like why am I doing this, Yeah,
because he's comparing himself to other people. Like he can do it within a few texts, but I need to work.
Not just other people. He's comparing himself to the hyper successful people.
Yep.
It's like how people like to say, oh, the world is unequal towards men and women in terms of like in terms of economics, and then they point to the super hyper successful men, and then it's like, you need to exclude the top 10%.
Yeah, but all the bricklayers and garbage collectors are men also, right?
Exactly, right? So what happens then is that these men they are so aware that they are worthless, and then also obviously, everything is online now. The girls who go and be like, oh, this guy is such a loser, and all the text is online. So men have all the access to the information that they need to confirm to their suspicions that the world is very unfair in dating, and then they just choose to opt out, kind of like 躺平, lying flat. So what happens is that there's going to be, from my perspective, it's going to be a huge influx of people. And then on the woman end, is not to say even worse, but they are getting it just as bad.
Yeah.
Because what happens is that now what women are starting to realize is that the female attention gets you a lot of money, etc. So that's good and all that. But a lot of women are, I would say, they're taking the non-traditional path, so they are more promiscuous, let's say. But what women also fail to realize is that number one, there's a reason why childbirth, all this is a thing. We are wired for it, and that it does give you a certain level of pleasure or happiness that nothing else can give.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna find it out if you're gonna go on the traditional way and then etc. But the second part is this: for a lot of women, they tend to misunderstand the difference between men that they can sleep with and men that will be in a relationship with them.
Yeah.
You see? So they are very different. So like the goal of a woman is to get the man that she
The best
wants
meal possible.
to be in a relationship with him. That means he needs to sacrifice all his other options. Remember, he has medium-sized balls. That and if let's say you're sleeping with you're being intimate with the top 2% of males,
They have options.
a lot of options. They have more options. It's much harder to find a 2% male than to find a 2% female from the female perspective, because the competition for those guys is insane. Like women are insane when it comes to competing with the man that they want.
Yes.
Okay, so for them, they tend to mistake this, and so you get, and also for example, women now, they are much more educated than ever. But on average, women date sideways and upwards, while men date sideways and downwards. Okay, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So now if, like for example, one friend of mine, he doesn't. I think he comes from an okay family. He makes okay, but his girlfriend is a really rich, doctor, kind of medical practitioner.
Okay.
She probably makes like 6 times his salary. Okay, they got married.
Okay.
But the thing was that they met in high school and they was together since high. I'm sure if they were no longer in high school,
Right, yeah, very difficult.
there is no way on earth that she would do that unless that guy is top tier in every other way, which is like, physical attraction, intimacy, and everything else.
So I just want to, it's a very fascinating conversation, but I just want to translate like what you're describing, right, into like an investor. So like if you're an investor looking at all of this information, right, where do I put my money basically?
How do you apply it?
So where do men who are unable to get women and have nothing else to do with their time spend their money on? Well, apparently crypto. No, but they obviously are going to spend a lot more on video games. They're going to spend a lot more on paying live streamers. They're going to spend a lot more on physical goods, etc. So you are going to have a large generation of men as well as women, because women, these 30, 40-year-old women who have extremely good careers are going to find it very difficult to get married to the guy that they think is worthy of them because their standards is just supply and demand.
Yeah.
So now, if you look at what the women who have high income levels spend, especially if they're single, well, they spend a lot on luxury goods.
Yeah.
They spend a lot on skincare. They spend a lot on makeup and all that kind of stuff. So you basically have to go and look towards where these people are spending their money. So for me, I think, but dating apps is always, dating apps are like lottery tickets. It's like, even if the guy thinks that he has no chance, there's still a good, that you go on an app and then they say, 47 women have swiped left on you. Do you want to find out who they are? Pay $50 to find out, like no matter how badly you think of yourself, the fact that this app tells you that there's somebody out there that is interested in you means that you're going to spend every now and then. And you're going to try because you do have medium-sized balls.
Yeah.
So
nice. Thanks for the reminder.
Biological reminder.
Sorry to interrupt this podcast. I know it's a little bit annoying, but I want to tell you something that I think can be really helpful to you. I can tell you're really interested in the stock market and want to learn more about it so that you actually know what you're doing, especially when today things are getting more complex and complicated. That's why we came up with the Stock Investing Blueprint, or SIB. It's our signature e-learning program that teaches you how to pick the right stocks most of the time, buy and sell it at the best possible time, and manage your stock portfolio systematically. It currently has more than 10 hours of content and it's growing. You'll also be part of a group of like-minded investors that can help speed up your learning process. To hop on the program, click on the link in the description or go to learn.firl.co/courses/SIB. I think there's two. One is what you're describing are the big market, right? Let me summarize, see if it makes sense. The first one are the bottom 80% of men who need to spend on things like live streaming and gaming. So maybe we can talk about that later on. And then, but the flip side are the women who cannot get the 2%.
Yeah.
Which is a significant amount, right? Because the math is at least 50% of men and 50% of women won't get what they want, at least, right? So in terms of the guy side, right? Like, have you looked into, we talked about live streaming just now. So have you looked into gaming or any other areas that you think that is going to be exciting? And what are some of the names?
Gaming is very simple. You just buy Tencent.
Right.
It's cheap. I can't remember the guy name. What's his name? Richard Liu. I'm not sure. I don't think it's Richard Liu. It's
is he a gamer? Hedge fund manager?
He was the guy from Goldman, if I'm not mistaken, who left Goldman and joined Tencent quite early. And then he basically reallocates their capital, and like all the purchases into all these game companies that they're buying is all from his ideas.
Okay.
So Tencent, I think, is one of the cheapest gaming companies in the world right now. They are getting like hammered in China, but everybody's getting hammered in China. And the thing is that the Chinese, here's the thing, the Chinese, I fully agree with what Xi Jinping is doing, which is, I sound like a China businessman now, right? I fully agree with China. But it does make sense, like, you stop the young children from playing too much games. But I do believe that gaming as a habit, gaming is just too amazing of an activity that you can still pick up the habit at the age of 19. It's not an issue.
Or even an adult.
Exactly.
Especially when you have more interactive ways. I mean, in the past, how do you interact with a computer?
Yeah.
You still use a very, in a way, traditional keyboard, mouse, whatever. But with the advent of things like, your Oculus, things like AR, things like metaverse, I mean, for the lack of a better word, I think it's not too late for even people in midlife to actually experience a reality, I wouldn't say reality, a virtual world that reminds them of either a childhood thing that they had to relive, or either that, or to find entertainment where they can't get it. In a way, not getting family time. Those single guys are not getting family time, not getting enough entertainment because they don't have a social life. So I think that gaming is a good segue for people who want to relive their childhood in a way.
Yeah. So I think gaming in general. So when I look at this from this perspective, I also went and studied the makeup industry and the skincare industry because all these lonely old rich women, I want to make money from them. But the problem is that skincare products, etc., it's too difficult.
Is it too fragmented?
Wait, it's difficult, because it's fragmented, or is it because
it's too easy for a new brand to come up?
Low barriers to entry lah.
Yeah, but then the big brands who are there already, the valuations are not cheap. Like L'Oreal, all these guys.
Shiseido, okay,
they're not cheap. But and then also if let's say you look at the retailers of this, then you start to look at, let's say, Ulta Beauty, and then I think there was a small company in Hong Kong, I can't remember the name now. But you look at all of them, and at the end of the day, you realize to yourself, well, the guys who are going to make the most money in the end is still the e-commerce platforms because they make a certain cut by every purchase, and then it doesn't change the fact that most purchases are going to go online.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's more like you need to come back to e-commerce platforms. So who do you buy? So now, if you think about e-commerce platforms, oh gosh, it's such a big topic. But let's say you need to come back into understanding e-commerce platforms and how they start. So at different stages of an e-commerce platforms, there are different success factors. So obviously the first successful one was more like Amazon and then eBay, etc. So now if you look at e-commerce platforms, the way when they first start, like the key thing that you need for an e-commerce platform to succeed at the early stages is you need to have a sufficient amount of goods, and then you just need to have reviews. Okay. Now, that was the initial stage. So you have trustworthiness, and then you give them a payment mechanism, and then you have a sufficient amount of goods. And then the middle stage is where you need to build up your logistic network to get to your, how many day delivery, as well as build up your e-commerce platforms to have tools for advertising, all the kind of stuff, etc., etc. And then there's the end stage now where logistic platforms are basically built up, and then so the main money maker is actually just a platform itself. But so it's a really difficult thing to answer. So if you look at, like, let's say Alibaba let's say we just pick Baba as a reference point. So they started as just being a pure platform player. Okay. So you do your listing, and then you list on Taobao, etc. And then you sell to everybody. Now, what happened is that when they started from there, they think to themselves, okay, we are growing very fast. The problem now is not that we can't get enough customers, it's that the infrastructure is bad.
Correct.
So we come up with NPay, which is great because you own the financial infrastructure. But then you also have to invest in the logistics infrastructure.
Yep.
But the problem with logistics infrastructures is that if you go and study the China network, or basically every single logistic company network in the world, their profits at first grew quickly, but after that it's just a relentless fall downwards. Like the rates for per package is dropping by 20 to 30% every single year relentlessly.
Why is that?
It's just the nature of things, because people think to themselves, because the first thing is that when you look into a newly developing country, the thing you want to invest in is logistic networks, because the start is where the money is, because that's when the spread is very fat and nobody has it. But the moment you start to expand, the margins go down like crazy, because this is a highly competitive network. What you need is just a warehouse and motorcycles and vans, So it just drops like mad. And in 2020, it actually dropped so badly that I think, Best Inc. Best Inc. is one of the 四同一达 in China, which is the China network. They own about 10% of all traffic. They were growing like crazy before this. They almost went bankrupt. Okay, because
of the rates, declining rates.
And the problem with these rates is that they're never going up. Like there's no situation where you own enough market share and then it goes up. Like you can pick the countries with the most developed logistics systems in the world, and you can pick their biggest player, and the guy is making sub 10% ROE. It's just a fact of life.
That's the nature of the business, fulfillment logistics business.
Unless you are FedEx or Shunfeng.
Ah.
Because of FedEx and Shunfeng is different. You are like, you look at now, it's so messed up as a logistics company. You go onto your Lazada and Shopee app, do they even let you pick which logistics?
Yeah, correct.
Exactly. You have literally been commoditized to the bottom.
Yeah.
But Shunfeng and FedEx is different because they do long distance, time sensitive, this kind of stuff. So this sort of stuff, you can charge the margins on it.
Yes.
Like I remember I was seeing the CJ Century. They were saying that, the Shopee was paying us like $4 per package, and then we have to pay our driver something like $4 per package. So it's like everything else is like just swallowing the cost. But the thing is that for some reason everybody seemed to want to enter this industry, but the more I look at it, the worse it is. So now, when you come to this, so Alibaba goes, okay, we need to somehow invest in the logistic network. So they go, we're going to do China. We're going to come up with a network. But you can't just come up with a software network that links up all the packages to all these different carriers and then come up with the warehouses, etc. Because these guys still need money. So what they do is that they go and invest a lot of money into these companies, and then these companies, obviously, because it's such a competitive network, is going to lose money, and so you see their stock prices drop down while Alibaba buys here, but they have to. It's a cost. You can do it either way. You do it yourself, or you invest in them. Now, Jingdong went a different route. Jingdong went, we're going to do up our own logistic network. They can do that, but the logistic network is more expensive than China, for example. Even though it's better, it's more time sensitive, etc. But that's a different topic. So now, what happens is that when you build up this logistic network and then you get to like 2016, 2017, is that now that you need to know the main money maker is always the platform. Everything else is irrelevant. So now when you have the logistic network, and then the logistics network can service other people as well. So then you have Pinduoduo and the speed run to being a billionaire. I think the guy from Pinduoduo started Pinduoduo in like 2016 or something like that, or somewhat earlier than that. And in less than 5 years, he's actually the richest man in China. But he was smart because like right when he was about to be the richest man in China, he donated away 50% of his shares. Because people were like, why did you do that? Oh, I don't want to be number one. In China,
it tracks unwanted attention.
Jack Ma would know lah.
Yeah.
Not Jack Ma, I mean, we need Gong Gong will know. Gong Gong. You don't want Gong Gong to see. You don't want the newspaper to come up. What's the guy? I can't remember his name now. The Pinduoduo founder, but they want his name to be richest man in China on the newspaper. It's like, oh, no thanks. I don't need that attention. I'm willing to pay you $50 billion to take that attention away from me. So then it comes up to Pinduoduo. So what happens is that before this, Alibaba started with Taobao, which is all the low-end platforms, the low-end listings. And then you have Tmall, which is the premium listings. And then Jingdong went and be like, Jingdong decided, and then they're going to do primarily third-party models, so people list on them. Jingdong went a different route. Jingdong went the Costco route, where they went, customers want fastest possible delivery, and they want lowest possible price.
Yeah.
And they want authenticity. Because even until today, authenticity is still a big issue when it comes to Chinese e-commerce. Oddly, despite all the fines. Give me a second.
Yeah, you got water there too.
So, Jingdong is quite special. It's one of the places where you can order a fridge in the morning, and then by the afternoon it reaches you.
You get it, yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit different from Alibaba, unless in like the key areas.
Yeah.
So Jingdong went and be like, we're gonna do up our own logistics network, and we are gonna use our huge economy of scale to buy certain products, which is like they started with electronics, and then they went on to like high value FMCG goods, etc. And then we're going to use our huge economy of scale to buy that and then sell it directly as our own products. That means as a 1P model. Okay. So Jingdong always had the top tier of the market. I think the spend per customer is something like almost double that of Alibaba.
The basket size in a way.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to buy an electronic in general, they're going to go to Jingdong. So what happens is that Jingdong holds the top end of the market, and then the middle end of the market is all held by Baba. And Baba held something like 60%, then Jingdong holds like 20%, and 10% somebody else holds. Now, so what happened is that Pinduoduo went and be like, okay, we have these logistic networks all built up. So what is the remaining end of the market that nobody is biting? And that is your third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh tier cities in China, where there is actually, even though the logistic network is not good enough because the shipping fees are too expensive when you send over there. So what those people do is that, you have, and then these people have a lot of time. So what they did is that they basically said, hello, Tencent, can we pay you money so that you will allow us to put our platform on WeChat? And then people can then share the links directly. And then they started to do this thing where it's like, oh, you need to get 3 people together in order to get a 50% discount. These days, it doesn't matter anymore because, they will say, oh, you need the discount. You just put your name. You just the app automatically matches you with other people so that you can get the discount.
Group purchase.
Yeah. So it's kind of pointless already. But the initial part, it was really, really helpful for them. So they went on that platform. Then they started to grow like crazy. And then they focused on the extremely cheap products, like cheaper than Taobao. And then also they started to do this thing where it's like the customer to manufacturer model. So based on what the customer wants, the manufacturer amend their lines to sell to these people. But to be fair, I think other people are doing it. But one thing that the Pinduoduo really levered into is into the value for money aspect of this. Because they also started to one of the ads was very famous. Is an ad of this orange. If you were to buy from they tell you the orange, the process it goes through all the various middlemen, and then they say, okay, you want to buy this orange from the supermarket, it's 15 yuan. I'm selling you the same amount of oranges for 5 yuan. Why? Because it goes directly from farmer to my warehouse to you. Instead of going from farmer to middleman to bigger middleman to even bigger middleman, then warehouse, then the whatever, then refrigeration cost, storing there, etc.
Correct.
So they really leveraged on that, and then they just grew like crazy. So Pinduoduo grew at 100% per quarter, and like something obscene.
But it offered a value proposition to the clients, like what you just described. I mean, why would you want to pay the middleman when you can get equally similar or even better experiences at a cheaper price?
To be fair, it's not. That was something that they did a bit better. But one thing was also is that they also understood fully that now that all the platforms, that the underlying infrastructure are built, and because as a whole the market is still very underpenetrated, what you should do is that you should light money on fire and treat it as PPE investments. Like these kind of e-commerce platforms are huge positive cash flow generators, because what happens is that people sell their products there, and then the cash is held there for a few days or a month, and then it goes to the seller.
Correct.
So there's non-stop. The more you sell, the more cash you have. So Pinduoduo is one of those special companies that actually burn every cent for their operating cash flows into shipping, subsidies, everything. Like Baba never did that So, or they never lit that much money on fire compared to them. But in hindsight, I suppose Baba should have just, don't even bother making a profit. Just light all the money on fire and then just go.
Just to capture market share.
Yeah. And also the problem is, so that was how Pinduoduo come up. And then the next one would be Shopee. So Shopee was similar to Pinduoduo. So what happened is that, or C Limited, Shopee was similar in that they realized, okay, number one, infrastructure is all built. So let's light money on fire. Like Shopee only started to monetize in 2018 and very little. Like they were getting billions in GMV and they just say, I'm not going to charge a cent. In fact, I'm going to give up subsidies. Okay. Now, and then the second part is this. If you think about again, now you look at the initial model of an e-commerce platform, the first thing you need is trustability as well as a large selection of goods.
Correct.
Now, eBay and Amazon, they pioneered a way which is basically the seller can give something to the customer in order to give them review. And then they always looked at paying for reviews as a seller's job because the seller is benefiting for it.
Yeah.
But Shopee is no, I benefit from it. So they were I'm going to give people 1 cent per review, and they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And so they did. And so if you go back in time to 2017 and you look at the average review per item, now it's hard to say but
for Lazada,
there's a lot more reviews.
Yes.
Okay. So that was one thing that they really changed. And then the second thing is nobody has ever used, at least I don't know in China, but I know in Southeast Asia or all these areas, nobody ever used traditional marketing channels for for marketing. Like for example, I only started using e-commerce in 2020.
Wow. Okay.
That is completely unacceptable. If I'm the boss of Shopee or the boss of Lazada, I should actually fire my marketing department, because a guy like me should not be only using e-commerce in 2020.
It should have been earlier than that.
Yes. And the only reason I use Shopee is because of the damn radio ads. The Shopee,
John, it's so funny. You know, my son, who is 5, he actually sings that. It's by heart, you know.
Exactly.
It's crazy. I think it's insane.
Sorry.
No worries.
So you think about that. So if you look at a Lazada ad, the only way I will ever find a Lazada ad is if I somehow decide to play a video game and then they force me to watch the ad, and then yes, it's a Lazada ad. I always see Lazada ad. Shopee ads maybe about 30% of the time, but mostly it's Lazada ad. But the problem is you do not utilize these normal distribution. Like you look at Brazilian ones, they never use radio for a long time. They never use radio to advertise it. So Shopee did that because they realized that, look, infrastructure is all built.
Yes.
So what do we need now? We just need to fight for market share. Like
shout about it lah. Shout about the platform.
Correct. So they went and paid people for that. They gamified it the way Pinduoduo did in a much higher level. Like, you know, every day, like my girlfriend, you know, she will always bring her phone, I want to tap and make sure I get the 3 coins per day, and then next day it's 4 coins, next day it's 5. I'm like, you know, they're literally paying you like approximately 70 cents per hour to do this. But yeah, like you see,
But
you know,
people,
millionaire wife will just keep doing that because it's the exact same aspect. You see, like men will spend the time to play video games when it's completely negative EV.
yeah.
Like even for me, I just can't help myself. Like every few months I will download a game, then I'll play it for 3 days. Then I'll notice it take up approximately 3 hours of my time. And then this 3 hours is actually like costing me money just in terms of me doing my own work. And thank God I don't spend money. That's a line I draw, but it doesn't change the fact that it burns money, you know?
Yeah.
So if people are willing to burn money playing video games, why wouldn't they be willing to burn money, you know, giving you reviews? Like, you know, like my girlfriend insists always on giving the right review with picture and video. I'm like, that takes up time. And like, no, it's okay. Then the thing
Just to get the 5 coins.
yes, and the thing is that people think of themselves as doing the other people a favor. They'll be like, oh, my review will help the other people to make purchase. Because when I wanted to make this purchase, I wanted to find good reviews about this product, but I can't find. So now I will give the good review. But you see, people do have an altruistic sense to them. So they go. So, you know, the thing Shopee really did very well is to, you know, pay people like, you know, 0.5% the living wage, and then like really make money off your altruistic sense, all that kind of stuff. So they monetize like crazy. So they just lit the money on fire, and then just like, because all you need to do is get customers, you see.
Yeah.
Once you hit a certain amount of customers, or in YouTube sense subscribers, then you're set, you see. So that was the e-commerce platform as a whole. Now the difference between this and Alibaba is that, well, now why do I say Alibaba has a problem? Alibaba has a problem because, so this comes back into China now and tech. Okay. Now Alibaba has a problem because Alibaba has a huge amount of ego. Okay. I think it was because Jack Ma once went to Pony Ma and then asked for some money when he was like very young and very new, and then Pony Ma said no. So after that, you look at, you know, they and then after that, when they started to rise up, they just competed with each other on everything. Okay. So for example, there was one time when there was one, so basically when Pony Ma did a live streaming channel, iQIYI, or supported by doing their usual 35% investment or whatever, then Jack Ma was like, okay, we're gonna do ours, then which is like Mango or something. And then when this fella do music streaming, he wants to do music streaming. When they
So it's a tit for tat in a way lah.
Yes. But here's the thing, like, so the thing is that they always say, oh, this thing makes sense because what happens is that we can use their data, package it like Amazon Prime, and then we can use their data to go, you know, and monetize what type of things they want to buy, etc., etc. But the thing is that it would have been more efficient if you work together with Jack Ma, with Tencent directly.
Where's the fun in that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was this time when Meituan's CEO went to meet Jack Ma, and he was like, okay, you know, you have Ele.me, we have Meituan, which is basically together with Tencent. Then he said, you remember back then there was a e-hailing in China. I think it was
Didi,
Didi and Chuxing.
Choosing, yes.
DD choosing. So he said, last time you guys could work together, bind together, become DD choosing. Wasn't it a good thing? Then Daniel Zhang, the CEO of Alibaba, actually said, we consider that a failure. The fact that we worked together in this was a failure. Because for him, he says that what they wanted was Alibaba to win, not for these two. So,
too much.
For me, that doesn't make sense. It makes a lot of sense to combine it together and then you just make the money and take the proportion of share. So, I did my math, like for me, that's the problem. Unlike Pony, Tencent is different. Tencent has no imagination, but Tencent has a very good eye on the money. So they will always go like, oh, we have no ambition because not they will go. That's what they're saying. They have no ambition because they have WeChat, which just provides all the traffic in the world. So their edge is that I can provide traffic.
Yeah.
So they went and just monetize their traffic like crazy and then just own stakes in all these companies and help them succeed. A Berkshire Hathaway, I suppose.
Yeah.
But Baba is like, oh, we're going to make it succeed ourselves. But then they don't have the level of management that you need. Because to start up, to do a startup from the bottom, you can't just have you can't hire somebody to run it. I don't know how to put it. It's, the guys who run Pinduoduo, the guys who run who run like Shopee, the only way you can do it is you need them to work for, you need to find those guys, buy 35% of their company and have them work for you like crazy.
Yeah.
So that was what BBK, Pupu Gao, which is the owner of Oppo, Realme, all this, he did very well. He does a lot of these investments and Tencent as well. So there's actually, for me right now, the way I look at, there is no field where Tencent is, where Baba is actually far ahead of the competition now. In fact,
see.
Also for example, in terms of the live streaming, they were the first ones to really start it, and then for a long time they had 80% market share and then double every year just like that. But today people just went, Douyin and Kuaishou decide to light money on fire, and so
right
now you struggle. So it's so now it's but like I said, the thing is that maybe the growth slows, but you still have a billion customers. So
speaking of that, I think there's been a lot of so we talk a lot about the industry and the specific companies. Maybe take a bigger view, higher view now of China as a whole. I think one of the interesting things that I saw that day was that I think since, was it 2009, 2010 or something like that, obviously China has grown quite a big sum, right?
yeah.
And you would expect the stock market to do as well. But I think the stock market is only up 70% in 10 over years, something along that line. So if you're someone who has money and maybe they want to allocate money into China, right? Obviously you're in it. So what would be, I get your words of comfort, if there's any, to be in China? Because I think there's a lot of fear that, there's the government crackdown, there's VIE structures, there's all these little things that a lot of people are very worried about China.
Okay. So the thing that people tend to forget is that China was, in Donald Trump's word, I suppose, a shithole as early back as 1980.
Okay.
In half a generation, they went from shithole that can't even lift their eyes in front of the US to now telling them they're assholes. So in 40 years. So that if people used to say that, Lee Kuan Yew was a magician when it comes to management. Well, China learned from Lee Kuan Yew and then basically put a whole...
They put steroids on it.
They didn't put steroids. They put poor and determined Chinese people on it. that's the key thing they put. They put very poor and very determined Chinese people.
Very hungry.
whose Chinese New Year, they always say, 恭喜发财. You tell these people, let's make money, they're going to work at it.
Yeah.
So that's one. So now what people need to realize is that China is still finding its way. But the thing is that historically, okay, if you look at people make it sound it's so uncommon for crackdowns to happen in China, but it's so common. Every 5 years, a big crackdown happens, and then certain industries will take their pick. It can be luxury goods, it can be medicine, this time it's tech. Okay, so for example, and this coincides very nicely with the CCP re-election period, when the guy needs a new leadership. So for example, just a bit of a story. But the thing is that on a very fundamental level, the CCP does know that they need to work for the betterment of the people. Okay? Like if you look at Chinese policy, it's actually really, really hard to find a bad Chinese policy for that it comes to, in terms of for the people, what was good or bad for them as a whole. Okay? So for example, just to give you an example, about you go back to I think which year, 2013 or 2014 or whatever, you look at every single Chinese medical stocks, the price goes like that. Okay. Now, why did the price go like that? It's very simple. Because historically, before that, all the Chinese medical companies, they sell their medicines directly to the hospitals, etc.
Okay.
So prices were starting to go to be expensive. So the Chinese government went and like, you know what, we're going to solve this issue. So what they did was they created a body that consolidated the purchases of medicine for every single public hospital in China into one body. And everybody who wants to sell medicine to China must negotiate only with that body.
I see.
Yeah, medicine prices drop by 90%. So yes,
It's one big group purchasing organization, essentially.
exactly.
Right?
And it's actually good because what you get now is that the medicine prices in China is almost the same as I suppose India, where it's like they are the generic of the world.
Yeah.
And if you think about that, like which country doesn't have this? Well, US lah, and that's why their pills are like in the US, like some generic pills are easily $1,000 per pill when you can get it outside of here for like $2. And the only reason is because the FDA did not approve other generic makers, etc. And they did not. And for example, for let's say an Indian company to export their pills to the US is a lot of work.
Yes.
So yeah, that's one problem. So every year they come up with these enforcements. But the reason why they also have crackdowns a lot, or what people think about crackdowns, is because as a very young country, a lot of the laws are not formed. They don't wake up in the middle of the day and then be like, okay, our ex-colonial masters are the British, so let's copy their laws, lock, stock, and barrel, and put it in here, and then let's use it. They went and be like, we're going to come up with our own laws. So if you look at the tech industry, it's just a matter of time.
Yes.
Okay. So when the tech industry was first starting up, these guys were doing the country a favor.
Yeah.
It is doing the country a favor. So Xi Jinping and everybody and the CCP just went, you know what, you guys grow as much as you want, we won't bother you at all. Okay. Now, at some point, the business started to not so much grow the industry, but be very extractive. So let's say you gamify everything, you use insanely good recommendation engines and the data of everyone you have to recommend things that people would otherwise not buy, and then you extract from them.
Yeah.
So it became very, very exploitative and extractive. Now, the optimal Chinese business is this thing called, have you heard this sauce called Lao Gan Ma?
Yep, the chili, right?
Yes. Lao Gan Ma.
It's actually like sambal belacan like that, something like that.
Yeah,
but Chinese version.
I've seen it, but I've tasted it, but I don't know what's the name.
It got popular because the WWE wrestler John Cena kept talking about Lao Gan Ma.
Now, the Lao Gan Ma sauce in China, if you buy, it's like less than 7 yuan per bottle.
Okay.
But if you buy in the US, it's like 70 to 80 yuan per bottle once you cut. So people ask Lao Gan Ma, 为什么在美国这样便宜，在这里在美国这样贵，这样便宜？She said very simple. I want to make the foreigners' money. I don't want to make the Chinese money. While the tech companies are making the Chinese money and not the foreigners' money.
So it's the reverse, the flip side.
Yes, correct. So now so what's happening is that the tech companies are not going from, are not being enforced unfairly. They went from zero enforcement to normal levels of enforcement. Okay. And that's a huge jump for anybody in China. Now, if you look at like people, all these acquisitions, they look at the fines coming up from all these acquisitions all the time. And then they go, this thing is bad. But I mean, Facebook was just banned from buying Giphy.
Yeah.
And Giphy is like the most, not the most stupid, like that's the wrong word to think about. You don't think about a company buying a gift provider as monopolistic activities. Like if Facebook is paying, I don't know how much they're planning to pay, like 500-600 million for Giphy, what they're saying is that I would rather spend 500-600 million and get Giphy now than spend cheaper than that amount to build my own Giphy.
Correct.
Okay. But they can't. So imagine that. Now, the China, what happened is that they have been acquiring companies. Like there's no such thing as like anti-monopolistic law in China for a long time. And that was why Baba and Tencent can just, throw their weight around, and then it's a fact in China. You know, if you don't have Tencent or Baba behind you, your tech business is gonna fail.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's happening now is that they are retrospectively fining these people for this, but the fines are not big. The only one who really got a big fine was Baba, and also because a lot of the billionaires. So this is also a Baba problem. So the thing is that Jack Ma, there was one time when they were in the US, all the tech billionaires had lunch together, but they didn't invite Jack Ma, and then they put a picture of it online. And then people was like, "Where's Jack Ma?" And then Jack Ma felt insulted, so he went and organized his own lunch. He brought Bill Gates, George W. Bush, everybody over, and don't invite any of the tech guys because it's the Alibaba event. So you sense the ego kind of shit.
Yeah.
So what happened? And then the thing is that Jack Ma, for a long time, these tech billionaires thought that the problem with tech billionaires is that, I mean, when you make 100 billion, then you start to think that you own the world. And the thing is that the CCP can never accept that because for them, number one is always CCP. Money is different from power, and power is more valuable than money. So, Jack Ma, there was one time when there was this guy from the government. He said he sent out a white paper saying that there's a lot of fake goods on Alibaba platform, etc. Jack Ma went and wrote that guy's name exactly on Weibo and then say, hey, don't simply slander us. We've been doing what. Like, that is actually a completely unheard of thing that you should never say to them.
Yes.
But back then they were growing and Jack Ma was close to Xi Jinping. So whatever it did, let you guys do. So when people see that Jack Ma can do that, other people start to also, push around, like the government will tell Tencent, slow down acquisitions. Tencent will, it's okay, then they acquire anyway. So what's happening now is that the government have a lot of. Then we obviously know all the story of what Jack Ma said, and then that just shifted because Xi Jinping at that moment was just like, you know what, my elections are coming up. Let's show you who's boss.
Yeah.
So now everybody's getting fined and all this, but they are not going to the unspeakable routes. Let me just put it that way. Like they are pushing back, but it's the regulations are still in line with what you would expect in other countries. The only difference is that unlike in other countries, you are at the behest of a benevolent dictator. So there's no such thing as going to court to fight your stuff. You just shut up and you just pay.
Yeah. I think would it be fair for me to retrospect, if you look at it, when the US was also going through a capitalistic growth and they had conglomerates that grew so big, companies like Standard Oil, companies like AT&T, and in a way, the government was playing catch up, similar to what China is experiencing now. Because if you think about it, like what you said, in 40 years, China transformed from a very, very socialist backward state to today. The government is always a lagging indicator in a way.
Yeah.
Government policies and all that, they're now realizing, hey, the US did this. They had to break up the Mabel, they had to break up the Standard Oil.
Correct.
And this is the learning curve that China is experiencing today.
Correct. Yeah. And also what's happening is that, I think it also makes a lot of sense because you don't want your tech companies to stop being value adds instead they extract. So what's happening is that China has always, their preference is that you want to make money from the foreigners. So if you're investing in China, you want to always look at the people who make money from the foreigners or use the foreigners to save money for the locals.
Yeah, but there's a very interesting point I want to peel a little bit deeper, Jonathan. If you look at where the success of Tencent, Alibaba today, you don't see them being, in a way, very internationalized. When I say international, I mean, if you look at Amazon, they've been very, very successful in their home state, but not so much in other places. Maybe a little bit in India, maybe a little bit in Latin America. Is it somewhat of an e-commerce curse? Because eBay went through the same thing. They tried to go in China, they lost out. And then, and Alibaba, through maybe because of Lazada and all that, they're still losing out here. Is that something of an e-commerce curse that is also always very localized?
Or just like a big company curse as well?
I think the US has 400 million in population, something like that.
Yeah.
China is 1.8.
Yes.
So that's the first step. They go and be like,
Yeah, 1.8?
No, 1.8, 1.2.
no, sorry, 1.1,
1.4.
1.2, oh, sorry,
1.3.
1.3.
1.8.
I didn't
Sorry.
realize the Chinese population
I was
doubled.
thinking of the vaccine numbers. I forget, kind of need to divide by 2 and then plus a bit more.
Yeah.
So it's about 1.3. So they have 3x the population. That's one.
Yeah.
So their population is so huge that you can be successful in China and not do anything else. I mean, if you think of it, if you put yourself in let's say whoever, any of their shoes, you're growing at like 60% per year. Okay, you're making money hand over fist, and then everywhere you look at the same China face, and then all of them are trying to eat your lunch. Like the fact is, it's already extremely hard to compete in China alone.
I see.
Okay, what happens if you put a Chinaman out of China? Forrest Lee, C Limited and Shopee. You know, and now we will see how he will do in Brazil, where
That's right.
Mercado Libre is going to realize what it means to compete with the Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's the first one. It's just that the local business was too good. And then the second part is that the tech business in China started with consumer facing ones because it's the most profitable tech business ever. They never went into business to business. Yeah.
That's a very good point.
While for the US, it's so developed that they have a huge business to business market, which they can then export. So I guess what's going to happen is that the tech business in China will need to now start to grow the business to business end. So they are still going to spend an obscene amount in China to go and solve the grocery shopping, the farming problems and all these kind of things. But and in terms of like tech exports, now this is one thing that I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I always felt like, you know, like people like Ray Dalio spoke about the rising of first world to third, and then the falling of the superpower.
Empires.
Yeah. The problem is that I think this is kind of a different scenario. I feel like it's kind of going to be more like China versus West versus, instead of like the fall of the US, it's more like, because the difference is that China, unlike the US, does not try to hide its ambitions. It's actually very aggressive towards it, and stuff like that. So they have the right to. But so what's going to happen is, and then also the second question here is that I keep wondering to myself is that if let's say my name is Standard Chartered, okay, would I ever put my software or my data all on a Alibaba server?
Unlikely, but
Even if Alibaba offer me half the price and 2 times the capabilities?
unlikely lah.
I think their risk management team will not allow that.
Yeah.
Say.
There's no way anybody that is on any risk sensitive items will ever go and put it on a Chinese server, because the thing is that people are very clear that in China the government needs to say one word and everything is yes.
Correct.
So you can never put highly sensitive things on there, and so you are not gonna It's very hard to think of a place where I think B2B China is going to find it really difficult, other than in proper hardware manufacturing stuff. And but for consumer items, I think for the global one is they're still going to be they are going to continuously gain market share, like, you know, like Midea, higher,
yeah.
and then all these Me Electronics is fantastic business.
Yeah.
So
Me TV.
Yeah.
exactly, it's always the best price one.
Best price, and I was just telling the team, I bought this TV. I bought one for my home, and then I showed one to a good friend of mine who has, and he went about. He also bought one, and then remember you. Because of you, I don't know whether you know this, because of him buying the 34-inch monitor, I bought it. Because I know a kiam siap fella like him, right?
Yeah.
Is already past all the ticks, right?
Correct.
Is stingy enough to get value for money, then I go and buy it.
Yeah. Me is quite an interesting business. Like if you think about their business, like the brand has a scale law of its own, you see.
Yeah.
So what happens if how do I put it? So me, because they sell phones and all this kind of stuff,
Correct.
your brand actually extends to like all the smaller consumer electronics items, which are non-high tech, but people are just gonna go like, oh, it doesn't matter if it's non-high tech. The fact that you can sell phones means you sell this pretty well too. And then they come up with their own proper design language, and then you look at a Xiaomi product, you touch it, you kind of know it's a Xiaomi product.
Correct.
Yeah.
And before this podcast, we were sharing about the shaving ball, and you're talking about the hair clipper.
Yeah.
Right. So how much? Do you remember how much you got it for?
I think I bought it for 40 ringgit or something.
Yeah, 40 ringgit, and you're very pleased with the product.
Yeah,
right?
here's the thing. I remember the process. I was looking for shaving clippers, and then I thought to myself, let me find the cheapest one possible. The cheapest one possible was like 13 ringgit. Okay, then I was like, let's find the most expensive one possible. The most expensive one possible was like this German-looking one that was like 200 over ringgit.
Okay.
Then I was looking at all of these options. Xiaomi is somewhere in the middle, around somewhere above the bottom, which is 30, 40. But when I looked at it, people just don't want to buy the cheapest one.
Correct.
In general, because you always feel like the one is worse.
Yeah.
And then when I look at the Xiaomi one, other people want the packaging all looks like shit. The item looks cheap, etc. But Xiaomi, they have a way of making their plastics not look cheap.
Correct.
Yeah. And then when you buy it, there's a consistent if you go to this, there's a Xiaomi online shop in China, and then you go to it, all of their item listings, the ad writing is fantastic, and then there's always like a consistent language and consistent font, consistent colors that they use.
Okay.
And so when you look at it, you always feel like this is a Xiaomi product. So they're doing that very, very well. So that's why I quite like it. And then they are quite smart. So what they do is that for the key items where price is a huge factor, like their phones, they manufacture themselves. But for items like all these like electronics, what they can do is that they just order
outsource to an OEM, and then get it to no, because my house is literally being invaded by Xiaomi.
Exactly.
It's quite scary, It's really quite scary.
And here's the problem is that whatever you buy of Xiaomi, you've never been disappointed with it.
Exactly. I'm not the only. Okay, slight disappointment is like I bought this vacuum cleaner, cordless vacuum cleaner for my wife, and my wife always. I've lost count of how many cordless vacuum cleaners I spent because the battery life will die, right? That's the only thing that I think Xiaomi has kind of disappointed me. But I think about it, I bought something 3 times more expensive, which was a Panasonic. It also failed on me. I'm not insane that I'll go for a Dyson yet, but overall, everything that I bought, like what you said, is never disappointed me so far.
I think you keep complaining at that, right? Soon you'll be hit with ads already.
Yeah, I know.
Tell me, you're complaining. You push ads.
It's actually quite funny. That was precisely the reason why I didn't want to buy a cordless vacuum cleaner because of the battery. But when I bought a corded one, I realized how irritating it is.
Exactly.
Even though it's like $50 cheaper, it's like an $80 vacuum cleaner, but it's still like, then you think yourself, you know what? But then you kind of, I don't know. It's
right.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about China. I'm sure we can go on this, but let's hit home a bit, right? I know one area you are quite interested in for Malaysia is oil and gas.
Yeah.
And specifically hibiscus.
Yeah.
Hibiscus is something that we cover, especially John. They're involved in brownfield assets, turning them profitable, almost like cigar butt investors essentially, but for oil and gas platforms.
Yeah.
And what caught your attention, and why is it something that you want to talk about?
So I guess for me, hibiscus was one idea that is actually quite, I suppose, near and dear to my heart. Because I remember back in 2016, I was talking to that time I was going to I was going back to school for my accounting exams, and then I met my friend Joel there. Then we were talking about stocks a bit, and then I was asking him, what do you buy? Then he told me he bought hibiscus. Then because he thought the idea made a lot of sense, he liked the Anasuria fields and shit. And then I remember that time I was still very stupid. So for me, I thought to myself, okay, let's look at the annual report. Oh, massive losses. Because the past have massive losses, the future will also include massive losses. I will never look at hibiscus. Hibiscus was like 25 cents then, and then then it went up to like a high of 1.5.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was a main one. So I remember after that, sometime in like 2017, 2018 or 2019, I can't remember which year, I decided to sit down and properly study hibiscus. Back then I call it properly but what happened was I basically sat down, go through the numbers, go through the fields, etc. And then I got an understanding on the business, and then I thought, okay, actually it's not that expensive back then at 23 cents. It's actually like stupidly cheap. Okay. So today, not today, probably like a few months back, I started to look at hibiscus again, mainly from the Repsol acquisition. So I think it's quite a straightforward, idea. So the first idea is that I always people like to say that we can exit oil and gas. The world can run without oil and gas. And then I always show them this very beautiful chart. I'll show them a chart of GDP per capita over the last 500 years, and then I'll show them the chart of oil and gas production over the last 500 years. And you will notice the exact same thing. Completely flat, and then right around which year was oil discovered? Probably
1847 or something.
In China first, but wasn't massive. Then it was in Mississippi in the US.
Yep.
When did they start to did they start to refine it? John D. Rockefeller, that was 1910 or something, right?
Yeah, 1910, somewhere there lah. When Rockefeller actually started lah.
Yeah, sometime like 1910, etc.
Yeah.
Or somewhere like 1880, something like that lah.
Yep.
You look at now GDP per capita. If you look at historically for the last 500 years, or even the last 10,000 years, if you want to, it has never gone above 1% per year until 1910 or 1920. Why was that the case? It's very simple. Previous fuels like wood only give you, when wood first came out, we had like fuel efficiency of like 5% or whatever, something stupidly low. And then when coal came out, we had something a bit higher, but you only got like 10% or less. Petrol, when it was first discovered, or crude oil was first discovered, gave you a fuel efficiency of like 30 to 40%, 3 or 4 times higher.
Correct.
Okay, and because you have this incredible fuel efficiency, you can now go and create other things.
Correct.
Plastics, fertilizer. Like if there is no natural gas, there's no fertilizer. Period. Okay.
There's no modern world basically.
Yes. So I come from this perspective and I think to myself, okay, that's so that's one thing I always come to the conclusion, which is that you cannot live without oil and gas. Now, you come down to the second part of the equation then. So oil and gas, we obviously know the big price hike in it was very high in like 2013, 2014.
2030, 100 over.
Yeah. And then after that, there was a crash. So what happened is that, basically this is a commodity business. And then when it comes to commodities, like supply demand, like people think, if supply goes up by 5%, so what? Nothing, right? But that's not the case for commodities business. For commodities business, when the supply is higher by 5%, the price can drop by 50%. Because it's so tight, you see, the supply demand. But if the supply is lower by 5%, the price can go up 2 times, 3 times. And that's the case for example, I think the shipping one, I think the prices are up about 8 times. And that's only due to like a 12 or 13% shortfall in supply of container ships. Yeah. So we're looking at that kind of supply demand dynamics. Now, oil and gas, the interesting thing is that, everybody is so hoo-ha about it in 2013 and 14, but that was a peak. After the price dropped like crazy in 2016, at first people were still like, okay, we will still invest. But then when it really drops until like $30, then people start to like, go and be like, you know what, we need to slow down. And from 13 to 2019 is just a constant downward trend for all the oil and gas companies, even in the US, but not so extreme because they pay a lot of dividends, etc. Okay. And so what's happening over the last easily 6, 7, 8 years is that there's been a constant underinvestment in it. Okay. So what we can, and then when the pandemic hit and the price goes to negative, and then you have this situation where investors overseas are basically telling the oil and gas companies, if you invest in capex into oil and gas, I will sell your shares. Because a lot of these investors, they are not investing their own money. Yeah. So they are like, we need green.
It's ESG lah.
We need ESG lah. I mean, I'm not trying to disparage ESG. I suppose there is a case for lowering the amount of carbon dioxide in our environment. But I'm not sure if this is the way to go, but never mind. So anyway, there's been a huge underinvestment for quite some time. And so so what happens after the pandemic was that, so 2016, we discovered this thing called fracking, where people learned that, there are new ways to pull out oil from the US. And so US goes from from no oil production to
Number
biggest
1.
oil producer again in the world. They used to be the biggest. So that really distorted demand. And then a lot of these, back then the shale oil companies are like, we're just going to pump as much as possible because we want to expand. But now if you look at the language for all these shale oil companies, they're going, we're not going to expand, etc. So now, let's come back to Hibiscus. Hibiscus is quite an interesting company. When they first listed, they were like, they were like, oil price is so high, we're going to try and find new fields because that was the cheapest way. Then they tried to do the new fields thing, and they were semi-successful. The one in Oman and the one in Iceland actually did quite well. But the problem was that in 2016 when the oil crash hit, that was the same time these companies were like, oh, we need cash, by the way. And Hibiscus couldn't come up with the cash. So the other company, Rex International, went and paid up the cash themselves at a highly dilutive price. And that caused Hibiscus stake in the business to go from like 30% to zero. Because they basically get to buy shares at like some stupidly low price because of whatever agreement structure, etc. And so Hibiscus there and then should have died. Actually, at that year, it should have died. But somehow, that same year in 2016, because of these oil and gas companies are usually MNCs, whenever a crisis hit, the MNCs all just come together to a room and just, they all feel scared. It's not their money. And then they think to themselves, what's the most popular thing that we should do? They dust off their MBA textbooks and then they say, sell non-core assets regardless of price. They say sell non-core assets and then they add on themselves regardless of price. So that was how the Hibiscus got the Anasuria deal, which if you look at the numbers, basically gave them IRR of like 4 months or something like that. And then they also got the PSC deal, the South Sabah PSC deal, which again
North Sabah
PSC deal, which also gave them like a IRR of something really low, like also around 6 months or whatever.
That's crazy, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously after that, no such deals anymore. They kind of have to start to dig a bit, VIC 37, all this kind of stuff. It's just, because these guys woke up and like, oh, by the way, the fields are still making money. Let's keep them. And then the one thing that I feel sad is at that period when Hibiscus was coming up and making a lot of money, Rex International, the Oman fields actually found a lot of oil and it's actually quite starting to need the money. But Rex International, the price dropped like crazy because it was an investment phase. At that period, if Hibiscus bought the shares in Rex and take them over themselves, it'll be 10x now on that particular one.
Yeah.
But now mine is too late. So again, 2020 happened and then the big crash happened. And then again, all these MNC bosses again wake up and be like, oh, let's bring out our MBA textbooks, sell non-core assets, regardless of price. And then now there's a top down, they are topped up with, Greta Thunberg telling them, don't do this, don't dig anymore, etc. So they went and sell off again their field, the Repsol field to Hibiscus. And from what we can see, the IRR of this Repsol field is going. There's a few key things about today's Repsol field. First is that it's probably going to triple the profits of Hibiscus. That's one. But number two, people went and be like, oh, it's only going to triple the profits, but only for a few years because the reserves are limited. But that's where I went and I'm going to understand how they calculate these reserves. And turns out the reserves, among other things, is limited by the amount of your concession contract.
Yep.
So if you can extend your concession contract, good. Now, the owners for the Hibiscus, the management said that, okay, we are already going to negotiate that to talk about the extension of this contract. Then I say, what are the odds of it happening? They say, very, very likely. I say, well, why would you say that? He says it's very simple. Number one, for every single oil company in Malaysia, at least he says, they always get to extend the contract because if you don't extend my contract, what's going to happen is that I will just do zero maintenance capex. And if I do zero maintenance capex, I will make an obscene amount of money. Now, and what's going to happen is that at the end of it, you're going to get back the asset, but it's going to be in horrible condition. Let's say you go, I want to cheap on this. I'm not going to extend. I'm going to take over myself and then build it out myself. But when you take over it, it's going to be in such horrible condition that you literally cannot run it another day, and you're going to spend an obscene amount of money to go and maintain it. But the thing is that when you seal off a well, it's not like when the well comes back up, it's the same amount of oil will pour out, you see. It's probably like less or whatever. It affects the production. So it's actually more economical for you to just, and you'll probably spend easily 2 billion or something like that to go and that's my estimate, to go and redo everything because it's, little bit of maintenance and a lot of maintenance, the price is like exponential difference. Yeah. So they say it's very likely. And so I was like, okay, so if we were to assume it's very likely and then we extend the concession period, etc., you realize that Hibiscus is selling for something like 3x earnings or less. And that's based on the oil price of like $60. But if you bring it up to current prices of $70 or $80, I think it's a lot higher. So the next portion of the question is obviously that, and the thing about these agreements is that they're the most beautiful agreements you've ever seen. Like the company will say, okay, we agree at this price at this date. you need to purchase it within, let's say, a year or whatever. And then the thing is that all the earnings from this date onwards accrue to you. So let's say when you do purchase it within a year, what happens is often that this company has made, the oil field that you're going to buy has made so much money that they can just take the money from the oil field and then pay to that company, and then you get the asset for close to free or close to zero IRR. And no, sorry, not at zero, like 100 or 120 or 200% IRR or something like that. So so it's a really good deal. So, I thought to myself, but the thing is that even in 2016, when the people first found this Anna Surya deal, and then you could see the numbers properly, the stock price never moved. For a long time, it did not move. Only when the oil started to flow out sometime in like late 2016, early 2017, then the stock price started to shoot from 30 cents to $1.50. So I think it's just a matter of the market feeling a lot of that. They're not seeing it yet, so they don't believe it for now.
I would add a few things as well, John.
Yeah.
One is also, I don't know if you managed to see this piece of news. The EU now is starting, last week, starting to draft laws that define gas investments as green investments. Gas and
Nice.
I kid you not, seriously, that caught my eye because I was like, I wanted to add to the video today, MJ, but I thought it was just too much to. But in this long
That's quite
form,
funny, actually.
yeah, it's like I was reading it and I was laughing because from an oil and gas executive, right? I was like, okay, but the reason why they did that, John, was because of this ESG team. It is actually hurting the amount of portfolio or the size of portfolios of certain funds that are being trapped because they want to invest in alternative energy, renewable energy. But you and I know that when you look at some solar or whatever, you'll be lucky to get a double-digit return on IRR. So they say that can we, in a way, in the intermediary before we fully transition into a fully renewable whatever, can we amend the law or a
At least
framework,
the definitions,
definition that allow this to be considered greener? I was laughing. I was literally laughing when I saw this. There's one. Second thing, specifically on hibiscus, is I think the point that you mentioned about how do you define PSC. So I actually worked on a few fields that were actually taken back by Petronas. And it was so funny that I met Peter last week. I had a 4-hour chat with him about all the projects that we used to work on. The thing is this, if your field is very, very profitable and is in relatively good shape, Petronas wants to take it back. It's business sense, right? But if the field is about to die and they realize that, nope, I cannot be an AirAsia. I cannot be an AirAsia lean mean operator. I rather have someone like Hibiscus come in and do it. Now, the reason is very simple. One, I don't know when I was away, did you guys talk about abandonment costs? Because if you saw what Sapura sold out their assets, they sold out 9 million, for a field that will literally bring them back. The production of the field will bring them profitability within a year. Now, the reason why I want to bring this up is that a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of mechanics that go behind the scenes of the PSC. While what the reasons you pointed out are good for the extension, the other reason is really sometimes abandonment costs Petronas just don't want to bear. That's the reason why. They just want to say, hey, you settle it for me. You can extract whatever you want. And the last bit that I want to add on, especially for Hibiscus, I think is the nuance of it being a local company.
Yeah.
Because if you have someone like Rex or whatever, how likely are they to, in a way, be localized capital markets here to actually tap? And then, you and I, we had this phone conversation about, no, it was you or Sir Chai. Oh, no, it was me and you. We were talking about how Hibiscus struggled to raise capital because the bankers couldn't understand, right? It's really about understanding because the bankers don't actually understand how to categorize reserves. Sad to say that lah. I mean, that's from my assumption. And it is sad also that the capital markets in Malaysia, when we tap local capital, this is the deficiency or efficient competence gap that we have here. If you go to a Norwegian bank or whatever, they have, finance Start Oil, finance, all these guys, right? They know how to evaluate reserves. They know how to, make that kind of, and take that kind of risk, you see. Did you see that as a factor as well?
That's probably a factor that they had in raising finance. I mean, to be fair, like one of the biggest scandals in Malaysia is also one of the problems was their oil reserve report
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
forged.
yeah, yeah, yes,
So I
yes, yes.
imagine every single bank in Malaysia is like, yep,
No, they don't want to touch this stuff.
no oil reserves report for me unless you're Petronas.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then also I remember I was reading some of the foreign oil and gas companies, and people are writing about the research. They say, oh, this company is so cheap at just 7 times earnings. I'm like, well, hibiscus is 2 or 3.
Yeah, yes.
So
yes.
but that's the only real oil and gas play I'm interested in doing now lah. Like the rest are all just a bit
Right.
yeah.
So I think one thing that's been in the news as well, I mean, both in Malaysia and abroad as well, is actually inflation. Right? Inflation is I think the US like 6%. We had the broccoli saga, right? Like vegetables are really expensive now. And this, whenever inflation starts to come in, then noises of rate hikes start to come in. And we all know the different ways a rate hike can look for a system with so much liquidity, right? So what are your overall thoughts about the inflation situation globally and the potential of what was the word they keep using? Fat tapering.
Yeah. Taper tantrum.
That was a new word.
Yeah, taper tantrum.
I think one of my favorite phrases is from Lenin. There are decades when nothing happened, and then there are weeks when decades happen. So from 2008,
he would know what he caused it. Right?
So from 2008 to 2019, 10 years of like quantitative easing and inflation just refused to move.
Yeah.
I think what's his name? Howard Marks described it as pushing on a string, a string on a board. And you push a string, but the string is not moving, obviously.
Yeah.
And then now, suddenly the inflation is going to come, and then I wonder if you can stop it.
Yes.
So, obviously, if you look, there's a very beautiful chart recently that showed the number of, what was it called? The amount of money printed to inflation, and then plus the amount of like rate hikes that I think Volcker had to do, or whatever, Greenspan, or I can't remember.
In the 80s, Paul Volcker,
Paul Volcker.
Yeah, and also 1920s when they started. So it's Volcker had to push interest rates to like 25% or something just to stop the inflation from coming. So we're now in a very interesting phase, because the thing is that it's hard. The thing is that the right phrase to use is I don't know. But the interesting thing is that there's a lot of various factors affecting it. So, is also the shipping, is also the fact that people just started buying a lot of physical goods suddenly. If you told an airline there's inflation happening now, like, I don't feel the inflation. Not much inflation feeling here. But so money all went into buying physical goods, and then the ships, everything are all backlogged, and the backlog means people are willing to pay higher prices.
Correct.
All this kind of thing. So there's a lot of factors that are affecting the inflation of many particular classes of physical goods. But it's hard to say how much of the current inflation is just money printing. I mean, not how much. The correct word is how much is due to money printing, how much is due to
the
supply
weightage
chain.
is due to supply of money.
Yeah, so it's too hard to say, but I have a feeling that the way things works is always that things will need to get a lot worse before the right action is taken. So it's the only other exception is when it's a very popular thing to do, like printing money. Like after you learn how to do it in 2008, 2020, you print in just 1 month. But when it comes to removing printing money, that's a very, very, very painful thing to do.
Yeah.
And
it's because it's like going cold turkey, essentially, right?
Correct. So I am not sure how things are gonna end up. But as an investor, actually you have to think of ways around it. But what happens if inflation goes up, and then so that's where you're.
What if we have a 1970s kind of situation, right? Let's not talk about pre-World War II, Germany, right? Let's talk about 1970s where people had to line up for gas and things like that.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting time. Number one, interest rates have a very unique way of affecting our psychology. So number one, if you ask like somebody, okay, you buy government bonds, you get 5%. You buy stocks, you get 10%. Then, okay, an equal amount of people would want to buy government bonds and stocks. Okay, then because for 5% risk to reward premium.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask somebody, so let's say you get the proportion of 50-50 like that. Now, let's say you move the interest rates to 1%. You tell somebody you buy government bonds, you get 1% interest rate. You buy stocks, you get 6% interest rates against 5% risk premium. Then suddenly far more people will rather buy stock
Correct.
than to buy the bond.
Correct.
Because everybody has a minimum return that they want.
Correct.
But obviously what people also don't tell you is that when interest rates drop to 1%, the stock prices inflate like crazy.
Correct.
For many, many years. So, although one can argue that that's not the case for the tech companies because they do deserve that valuation.
Yeah.
For now, maybe with famous last words. But so it comes back to here. So I do wonder, like right now, everything is up. What happens if they were to force interest rates up to... It's too complex of a topic. It's really too complex of a topic. But I would say that a lot of the alternative asset classes like private equity or even crypto is the result of low interest rates. When interest rates are high, nobody's thinking about stock markets. Actually, they're thinking about bonds.
Correct.
So that brings me to the question, if let's say interest rates for US treasuries go to like 5% or even 10%, I don't know if it will ever hit 10%, but it might. What's going to happen? It's too hard of a question to answer because there's just too many moving parts.
Let me ask this way then. Like, why is it so hard to continue the route of just
Printing.
money?
Well, you're gonna have to find the thing is that printing money is a very bad thing for poor people.
I see.
That's a fundamental fact of life. Printing money is a horrible thing for poor people. And it builds up, nobody looks to Venezuela and be like, that's the right place to be. Yeah. So it's a very, very bad thing for poor people. And then the rich, if you don't own foreign assets, is also very, very bad. Inflate because it's a fundamental fact that the salaries, everything don't go up as fast as price of goods, everything go up.
Yeah.
So, and inflation and printing only helps people with assets. So I do wonder one question though, like maybe we can segue a little bit into crypto.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was asking this question actually, because I knew you would talk about it.
Okay.
And specifically, right, I just want to get a sense of if the Fed really starts raising interest rates, essentially it sucks out liquidity from all these asset classes that are even medium risk, like stocks, so-called medium risk, inverted commas, go back into bond and fixed deposit and whatnot.
Or, God forbid, gold.
Yeah. Actually, they won't hold gold if I'm not mistaken. The idea is that they won't hold gold.
Sorry, I was thinking in low interest.
When they're hiking, right?
Yeah,
'Cause
hiking.
that's the story right now.
Correct. Yeah.
What's the time now, by the way?
4:15.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, this is the last question already. So what do you think of all these riskier assets?
Okay, so the first question we need. Okay, crypto is actually something that I've been thinking about a lot for a long time. I have not touched anything, but I thought about it for a long time. Because if you think, let me say okay, if I want to sell you a stock called Hibiscus or whatever, MFCB or whatever, I'm sure I can put out a thesis for you that will get you to understand immediately. And then you will go and say, okay, I will buy because I like your thesis, or I won't buy despite understanding your thesis because I have better opportunities. Okay, perfectly fair, right? And then there's some small section that say I won't buy because I'm just either too fully, I just don't understand, or I'm just not interested in oil and gas. So I suppose you can call that an irrational element. Now, when it comes to crypto, the problem is for this topic, there is no middle ground available.
Huh.
You are either a genius or you are a fool. Crypto is either the next coming of God or Web3 as they like to call it now, or it's rat poison, depending on who you ask. Now, so why is that the case? So for a very, very, very long time, I thought about crypto. Okay. So I tried to go, I mean, I wouldn't say I know crypto better than most people who study crypto all the time, because the thing is that I don't spend that much time. Just occasionally, some days I'll be like, I need to really study this thing, and then I dive into it. And then after that, etc. But I will just point a few things. Okay. What are the mechanics to frying a stock?
Liquidity, news.
parties acting in concert, market makers.
Okay, but what are the mechanics? What exactly do you need to fry this stock up to 500%? Like, what precisely do you need? What are the ingredients? Quantitatively.
The volume, right?
Volume.
Trade
No,
volume.
quantitatively. Like, tell me how much money you need in order to fry this stock up to a market cap. Let's say I will tell you, this stock now has a market cap of 100 million. I want to fry it to 1 billion. Or what's the name? Focus something, or what's the other one? Data prep.
Or data prep.
Let's say we start, I have a 100 million company, I want to fry it to 1 billion ringgit. Okay. How much money do you need for what amount of free float?
You have to define the free float first, then only.
Okay, so let's say we define a 20% free float, and then we have an
100
end market
million,
cap.
right?
Yeah. And then end market cap of 100 billion that you want to hit.
100 billion.
1 billion.
1 billion.
You start with 100 million, you end
So you want
100
to
with
10x.
1 billion.
10x, you want to 10x the stock.
Yeah, so you want to hit about 10 million, you want to hit about 100 million, 1 billion.
1 billion.
10, okay.
10 times the
1
market
billion.
value today.
Yeah, and then you have the starting market value actually doesn't matter so much. But the end value and then plus current float of 20%. How much money do you need?
200 million, the 20%, right?
20%
On 1 billion.
On 1 billion.
So
Actually, less than that.
Yeah,
Less than
definitely, for sure.
Less
So
than
But
that.
I'm
how
just
much
using
would-
quantitative.
How much would you say?
At a 100 million market cap today, right?
Yeah.
20% free float. Probably 20 million.
Correct. Precisely right.
Yeah.
In order to fry up a stock to whatever amount you want, you need, and assuming 20% free float, you need approximately 0.5 to 2% of cash at hand
Yes.
to do that. Okay. Now let's think about the stocks. Okay. So if you look at despite many regulation, people have managed to do this with Blue Moon.
Oh, yeah.
Gold,
Yep.
all
Asia
that.
Sun.
Yeah, John So, and then Malaysia, we have your data prep. Still don't know who's behind it. Fintech, Berhad,
Yeah.
Focus, etc. Okay. Now, despite an insane amount of regulation by the banking industry, by the Securities Commission, by the bursars themselves, that you can still do things like this today in today's market, in Malaysia and Singapore markets. Like, I don't even know the other foreign ones. There's just too many to list. Now, let's look at it from a crypto perspective. Now, and obviously these type of stocks will have very high turnovers, etc. So now let's look at it from a crypto perspective. Let me pull my numbers a bit.
Okay, your phone is on the floor. No. There. On the right, it's on the floor. Got it?
Yeah, this was quite some time back, but it's fine. Let's see. Okay. Now, okay, so let's talk about like cryptocurrencies in general. Like, Tether is this stable coin. Okay, so everybody says that this is a coin, which means that it's backed by $1 per coin. Okay. Now, if you look at the Tether, and it's currently one of the largest coins in the world.
Stable coin is the largest.
Yeah, stablecoins.
Okay. But if you look at the turnover rates so if I'm not mistaken, the turnover for all cryptocurrencies, the total market cap of all cryptocurrencies in the world, back sometime because I did this study in like October or something like 2 trillion.
Yeah, today is about 3, give or take.
3 or whatever. Yeah. So 2 trillion. Now back then, the turnover for cryptos in the world was something around like $100 billion per day. Okay. Now, so that gives you a turnover of around 5%.
Yeah,
right?
Correct.
5%. Now, if you look at total assets in the world, like total stock assets in the world, and then you look at the turnover, total stock assets in the world is something like 30 trillion, and then turnover is something like 10%. Something like 10 billion. Sorry.
Cannot be 10 billion.
30 billion.
30 billion. 10% of the asset size.
No, 30 trillion. So it's about 30 billion in turnover. So the turnover for stocks is 0.1%. Okay. So what we're saying here is that the trading volume for crypto is around 50 times or more that of a normal stock. And people already say stock investors have a short mind span in terms of investing. So that means when people trade crypto, it's a lot shorter. The thing that just caught my eye so much is that I play poker a lot, and then a lot of the people in the poker community are huge crypto people. I remember there's this guy, Dark Poke. He's also one of a big crypto guy. He has about 33% of his assets in crypto, which a lot of people will say is too low, I suppose. But I remember he was talking about crypto a lot, and then he said, there was one time in 2018 when Bitcoin started to fall, and he go, oh shit, I didn't have a laptop, and I was like, I need a laptop now because I need to do some selling. And the thing that was so shocking to me was that he's such a big crypto proponent, and yet when the price is cracking like 10%, he's like, I need to sell.
And he's not a dumb guy. Obviously, he's a poker player, right?
Yeah.
So he can calculate odds.
Yeah. So now coming from here, so that's the one thing I want to point out. There's a huge amount of volume, trading volume. Now back then, when I was studying it, the trading volume is 100 billion. Guess how? If you were to split those trading volume up by components, Tether has a trading volume of around 70 billion.
Which is
Yes,
about
correct.
70%.
Correct.
Yeah, 70%, correct.
And this is despite only being 3% of the total crypto market
Cap.
So would you say that that's a significant? That's a
huge,
very
yeah.
significant gap.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay. So now let's go back to the second question then. So what is Tether? Tether is a stable coin backed by every single coin. But if you go into every single coin is backed by $1 in reserve, that's what they say very clearly. But if you go into their terms and documents, Tether says a few things very clearly. Number one, if you were to deposit money into Tether, they are not required legally to pay you back if you were to ask for the money. That's a fact in their terms and conditions when you read it. That's the first one. Number two, when you want to withdraw the money, regardless of any amount of Tether that you withdraw, you will be charged a lower of 0.1% or $1,000. Highest transaction fees in the world if you want to withdraw. So that means you think about the amount of people who can withdraw that. Like for you to make it worth it for you to withdraw, you need to withdraw probably at least 100 to 200,000 US dollars. That automatically writes off 99% of people. That means for 99% of people, the only way you get to withdraw money is P2P. Okay,
Correct.
That's the second point. Now, so the third question would be, is Tether's reserves backed by purely cash? And let's just put it this way, they just based off management's own words, only 73% is backed by cash. Okay, the rest is backed by cryptocurrencies. And that's just off management's own words. And these are the guys who were banned by the US and the New York from ever doing securities trading or whatever in the state of New York. Now imagine this, this currency is the backbone of all cryptocurrencies. People may agree or disagree with the statement because of trading volume. But this company is run by people who are not allowed to do securities trading in the US at all. Okay. Now, so there's also a white paper out there that states very clearly there are days when there was no Tether deposited, and then when they wanted to prove their reserves, right, what happened was that because they have no bank account, so what happens is that they tell the guys, okay, this is the bank account our reserves is at. So the day before they're supposed to prove the reserves, the money comes in from, what was their platform? Binance? No. I can't remember the name of it.
Is it Coinbase? No, I don't think so.
It's not Coinbase, it's the other one.
Bitfinex or
Bitfinex.
Bitfinex.
Correct.
Yes.
The day before they were supposed to prove the reserves, the money is transferred from Bitfinex bank accounts to Tether bank accounts, and then they say, this is our 73% backed in cash. And then the day directly after it is proven, the money goes back to Bitfinex accounts. Okay, so that's one. I mean, that's already for me a huge sign. So now the second question here is, there's also been proven very clearly that Tether has been printed to buy cryptos. On days when there was no deposits in, Tether was printed to buy cryptos in order to support the market. Now, if you look at Tether market caps, in terms of like before 2020, it was something like 5 billion or less.
Today is I think 70.
Today is 70.
70 billion, yeah.
Yeah, so at around, I don't know if it's around 10 billion or whatever, 10 to 15 billion if I don't remember correctly, before 2020. Before 2020, there was around 15 billion worth of Tether. And back then, the peak price that you could push Bitcoin to was around 20,000 US dollars. Today, there is around 70 billion, 75, 77 billion Tethers out there. And then the peak price you could push Bitcoin to is $60,000 per Bitcoin. Now, and incidentally, you remember we said just now that in order to pump a certain stock, you need around 1.5 to 2%.
Yes.
Correct?
For the free float, yes, based on the free float.
10x.
Correct. Yeah. Now, Tether is around 3% of all cryptocurrencies. That's one. Number two, you literally can't take money out of Tether. And then number three, the free float for cryptocurrencies is how many percent?
There's
Free float. I mean, if you're considering all stable coins, is it?
No, free float. If I'm not mistaken, when I did the study on free float of cryptocurrencies is less than 20%. If you exclude like the top 10% of holders, like past a certain amount of balance, like free float is like less than 20%.
But what's the criteria like? So for example, in stocks, there's like top 30 shareholders, right? So is yours the same definition?
So if you take, let's say, cryptocurrencies, people with more than 1 million USD, the free float is like less than...
the big whales, I think he's referring to, if you net out the big whales, or probably the validators,
what's the free float?
What's the free float?
Yeah.
Well, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
But it's findable. It's findable.
But based on what I read, they said it was something like less than 20%. So now, obviously, just because it squawks like a duck does not mean it's a duck. It could be just a very unique man, squawking like a duck for no reason. So the second point I tried to figure out was that what is a use case for cryptocurrencies? So at the end of the day, the only real use case I could come up with is that if you really, really want to monetize something while avoiding as much of the traditional banking system as well as your traditional regulations that comes to banks or securities, all this kind of stuff, then there's nothing better than crypto. There's really nothing better than crypto. And so, because if you think about, like, let's say now they're doing Web3, they say it's owned by this. Because it's also very interesting, because I was thinking about video games, like the different kind of video games. Now, if you think about, like, let's say like the normal modern video games, if you like to play Ragnarok today, the only way you can spend money in this game is you cannot actually buy things from other people because they don't want the money to go out of the system. So what happens is that you can only buy things from their app, and then all your goods is locked to your character, and the only way to sell your goods is to sell your character. Okay? Now, for crypto games, it's a bit different because all the coins that are supposed to be printed has been printed today. Okay? You're never going to print more coins. So the only way for the value of the game to go up is if the value of the coins go up. And the only way for the value of the coins to go up is to have more demand for your game. That means more attention spent on your game. And then if people think that your game has if the digital assets have a monetary value, it's less likely for them to sell, etc.
Correct.
Yeah. So based on this, actually the right way to make a crypto game is to, create the game and then get as much attention as possible. And if you look at the attention for video games in crypto versus in normal, like you go to a Blizzard con, right? Like you will find a lot more criticism than praise. While if you go to like any crypto game, the Discord channel, you'll find a lot more praise than Discord lah. So, there's actually a Malaysian one where they basically copied Mobile Legends and then just using 3 YouTube videos, they now have a market cap of like 450 million US dollars.
Wow.
So now the question here is this. So now people like to say, so the question here that I wonder to myself is this. Okay. The thing is that people say, market is always up, etc., in crypto. But here's the question I ask people, but have you ever taken your money out from crypto before? Or at least all of your money out from crypto before? And then they say, yes, I take it out and I put it in Tether or Terra. What's the other coin for that's under Terra one?
USD.
USD, yes.
US Terra.
Or they say to UST, which is backed by Terra capitalization, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or maybe he was referring to USDC, I think.
No, it's USD because he's talking about the burning mechanism.
Now there's a few more stable coins. Binance come up with their own stable coin, etc.
Yeah, USD, correct.
So I ask myself, these guys, when they say they have taken out money from crypto before, they have never taken it out before.
Like into fiat lah, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, taken out to fiat. They've only taken it out to Tether. And Tether prints coins to buy crypto.
Yeah.
By their own words. They print coins to buy crypto. So now, if you have this space when there's no regulation whatsoever and you can do whatever you want, imagine if Malaysia stocks, they let you do as much MOU as you want, what will happen? So coming back to cryptocurrencies, I tried to think really, really hard on a real use case for it. And other than when it comes to if I want to monetize something while avoiding as much of the banking system as possible, I actually cannot think of a use case that is just as well. It always comes out to a compute problem or storage problem in terms of it being a more efficient solution versus current products. And then there's this Tether thing which, begs the question. But then it comes down to the second question. Let's say if inflation does go up and then interest rates does go to, let's say USD goes to 10% interest rates. And if let's say people in crypto start to go, let's say they go, you know what, a lot of them have like, I have this obscene amount of money in crypto. The crypto has been dropping. Let's take 30% of my net worth out and put it into USD bonds or whatever.
Fiat assets.
Fiat asset,
Okay.
USD bonds or whatever, and make the 10% there peacefully. I really wonder, can the P2P market really take that amount of outflow? So that's really my big question. Like, it would be very interesting if USDT cracks 95. It has never cracked 95 for a long. I mean, the only time it cracked 95 was in 2016 or 2015. There was one time when they were like, USDT was, the backing lacks like 483 million US dollars, something like that. But currently, it has never backed 99 cents before. So I do wonder to myself, what will happen if it cracks 95? So I have no. So I don't know. But I do derive a certain comfort in this, in that people because right now I'm obviously at the side of where I can be either where there's there's a decent chance I'm completely wrong. Okay, and then this thing is the next coming of whatever. But I think to myself, if I was Form 5, which is like 2007 or something, and you told me YouTube is going to change the world in terms of like how things will be consumed online, or Netflix didn't exist then, but you tell me the shows can be streamed on there, I don't think it would have been very difficult for me to believe you and say, yes, I agree. Because I myself was using YouTube and I can see how much better is it. But it's just clearly a better use case. But if it's crypto, I just fail to find one use case where it is better it is a better solution than the other one, if not for the fact you want to monetize while avoiding as much regulation as possible. Like even the other day we were talking, I found this one where it's like a decentralized VPN, that kind of stuff. Okay, it's a very interesting decentralized VPN because the only real use case for me was that if you need a VPN that decentralized, and literally, because even today in China you can use any VPN, you can still use VPNs, you see. So what use case do you have that you literally cannot use any other VPN provider other than this one? Well, I suppose if you sell drugs or child pornography, then yes, you do need a decentralized VPN. But so the thing is that for me, the use cases are too
specific, too narrow,
enough to be monetizable. But I know for a fact that now the biggest poker games in the world, like where they play buy-ins, let's say 10 million US dollars, and you're a billionaire and you come in, the game is all run on Bitcoin. Because let's say because there's this guy, Alec Gores, he's part of Gores Group who popularized the Spark kind of structures, SPAC. And then there's another guy called Andy Beal who owns Beal Bank in the US. So Andy Beal lost to Alec Gores around 600 million US dollars. So when Andy Beal transferred 600 million US dollars to Alec Gores got a tax bill of 350 million US dollars.
It's crazy.
So after that, all the games are all in USDT or in all this, etc., Bitcoin. So yeah, there's a real use case in that, but I find very little other
use cases.
Successful use cases for the future.
Or at least better. I mean, there might be some, like you said, the decentralized VPN, but maybe not as...
even if the other one was thinking was now I think Terra is doing this. We're trying to come up with a decentralized wallet where you can use any currency in the world, exchange any fiat. But isn't that how would that be better than if the Chinese government come up with the digital
The CDBC thing, is it?
digital yuan, and then obviously they allow digital yuan to be converted to RM or whatever and directly pull out to your bank account.
Correct.
It's much easier for them to get the approvals, and then very few countries will dare to say no to them lah. And then you can keep your money in Chinese yuan, and then people can accept from that, etc. So I find it difficult to find, and the thing is that in order to, I don't know, I feel like for a lot of things to be run efficiently, it's going to be a centralized, and like even if today people say that the Bitcoin Foundation is decentralized or whatever, but it is still controlled by the amount of people who holds the most computation and the most coins.
Yeah, it's the 51% issue everyone's talking about.
So end of the day, it's still held by a controlled set of people. So that's it for. But I'm always struggling to find new use cases because there are too many intelligent people telling me that it's the future, but it's just. I mean, I suppose for video games it can, because it does unleash a new niche where people literally play because they want to earn money. But it does make me wonder, how will you attract you need to constantly attract new attention, you see. So maybe it'll be another game as big as WoW, but I have no idea.
Okay,
Very
man.
difficult.
Wow. Interesting thoughts. I don't know anything on that.
I know you guys have a quite a big, not big I suppose you guys are quite interested in crypto, but
We created a channel. I mean, you mentioned Terra. We are into Terra.
So
I mean, for us, the infrastructure is being built. I think that's the thing, because when you assess what crypto is trying to do is to lay a lot of the infrastructure. So, for example, your point about regulations or that, although it is one function, it is a huge function actually, because it's like saying, well, the crypto is great because the financial regulations are non-existent. But then in finance, there are many functions, right? So you need a lending and borrowing function. You need an exchange function, like to swap assets.
Correct.
You need a fund management functions, right? So a hedge fund functions, like in crypto, they call it yield aggregators. So what the current level of development is there. And the recent boom in crypto gaming and its half brother NFTs is going to essentially bring in the digital ownership economy.
Right.
And right now, because crypto is a very young thing, so obviously the in things are like cool art and gaming characters. Because so if you play WoW, for example, right? Yeah, you say you have a character, you buy items and all that, but the items and the character don't actually belong to you.
Yep.
It belongs to Blizzard. It's like Blizzard loaning you the characters.
I mean, isn't that the same for like if you were to own, like, let's say, what's the name of that thing? What's the most popular Axie?
Axie Infinity, yeah.
Yeah, Axie Infinity is kind of like Blizzard loans you that like Axie Infinity to an extent loans you the character as long as the servers keep running. If the servers die,
For sure. But for example, you can't list out your there's no like marketplace. I mean, there might be marketplaces for WoW characters, but let's say in the future, right? There is a game that allows you, let's call it Smiley Infinity by some other company. And what happens is that, hey, they thank Axie Infinity guys, the Axies that you have is you can join it or connect it to like this bigger character, or maybe your Axie Infinity now can become pets in this game, or it can become like something.
yeah,
So you can actually migrate these items over right now. It's not just something that operates within
That ecosystem.
But obviously right now the infrastructure is not there, right? It's still far away.
I would agree that's why I say the other part is gaming, because again, if it's like I said, you're avoiding a lot of the usual I mean, if Blizzard wanted to make their items like interchangeable for cash at any point in time, and then you can withdraw from Blizzard, the amount of regulations they have to go through is just insane now.
Exactly.
But also, I suppose it comes down to this. Have you used Oculus before?
No, I haven't.
I will get motion sickness. That's why I couldn't be a pilot. That's why I first person shooter games and all that. We've used it before. You forgot.
We use
Yeah, we used it once for the basketball game and the
that one was more for like a architecture function, meaning they wanted to show us a room, so they use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Was it Oculus, right?
Yeah, it was Oculus. Yes.
I recently went with a friend to try out Oculus. Then he bought one, and then he used it for about 2 hours and stopped using it until now. The thing about this metaverse is that, like, for the people to, like, currently the metaverse for me, it feels like using a Palm Pilot in 1998. Like, the use case is that bad for me, but doesn't change the fact that our phones now are like some super Palm Pilot. So, but it's like trying to build an infrastructure around Palm Pilot while you have Palm Pilot. So that's a really difficult one. But when the Palm Pilot does come out, what makes you think it's not an Apple Inc. that's gonna own? So I don't know. It's a
never-ending conversation, lah. For sure.
Put it this way, I think maybe to sum it up, for every new evolution or every new adoption, you look at today, even the fiat currency it's not a very old thing, It's probably 100 years, 200 years kind of system, and they were things.
Isn't it thousands of years?
Fiat.
I suppose non-gold. You mean non-gold back?
Non-gold back. Yes. No, I mean even in fiat, is it 1,000? Let me think.
No, I mean it depends on what you want to define fiat as. Because, for example, touch and go is fiat.
Yeah.
Right.
What about Roman coins?
Or if you define that far, then it would be thousands of years. But as a currency function, what is it meant to serve and how it has evolved, every time a new evolution comes into play, right, there is always an experimental phase where infrastructures need to be built. There's always meant to be an experimentation phase where there are some, for the lack of a better word, scams or what do you call it, hypes or things that do not work out and do not pan out in the long run. But I think in any case, how I would look at it is that not just looking at it on the surface layer.
Let's take one step back. Okay, if I move you back to 1999 and I told you that in the future you buy goods online, would it be very hard to convince you?
But if you take you all the way back to 1970s when the infrastructure was not there,
when there's no internet,
then it will be very difficult, you see. So because for example, for the 1970s to reach to 1999, and then for it to actually become mainstream in 2016, what happened was the shrinking of semiconductors. Correct.
Okay, so we need a lot more computing power and a lot cheaper in order to achieve that. Do you think this is a similar case for cryptocurrencies? Because right now, the crypto world, the main problem is that everything is similar to the real world, except that there's more compute needed, more storage needed. Who do you store it with? Do you store on the decentralized means what? And then it's like, basically compute, storage, and so...
I actually don't think the tech is the issue.
Do you think it's a compute problem?
No, because if you look at when Bitcoin came out, right, and they started with proof of work consensus, it was very clunky, it's a very old way of validating nodes, expensive, not very green. Then when Ethereum came along and as is trying to evolve, he's moving into a proof of stake. And then now a lot of the...
Have they moved into proof of stake yet?
They are moving there. So what they're doing is they're building layer 2, is what we call, which is scaling solutions. Won't get into it right now because it's very complicated. But what has been dubbed the Ethereum killers, right?
The Cardano, Solana.
Solana Vex. So Solana, Terra, and AVAX. These are the three leading the charge. There's actually a lot of others, but these are the three leading the charge. What these guys have done essentially is to create validate nodes to sustain the blockchain with a lot less
Resources.
energy, a lot less resources, right? So like what you need in the past, right, is to have many mining machines.
Correct.
So you need a warehouse, you need electricity and all that. Now what you need are GPUs essentially to store data actually. Because when you validate a node, you need to store a lot of these data. So it is expensive in that regard, but it's not as expensive as...
Isn't it just resulting in more centralization?
Yeah, so you raise a very good point. So actually what is happening now is that as Bitcoin dominance starts to reduce, so does the narrative of decentralization.
Correct.
And this is something that I've always believed
So the
in.
end result is WeChat lah.
But
Except global lah.
except global and way more flexible and without Chinese laws.
Without Chinese laws, yes.
So think of it this way, right? The people who believe in the decentralization narrative, 5 to 10% of the US populations, i.e. libertarians.
Yeah.
That's 30 million people. 30 million people, not enough to bring an alternative asset class
Nope.
to challenge the traditional asset classes. So how do you get the non-libertarians to hop onto crypto? The only way is convenience. The only way is making money. That's
Frictionless. There is
exactly. Good UI, UX, things like that.
and you have an asset class that actually use them some kind of a cash flow, some kind of a capex appreciation, capital appreciation. You see,
basically money, convenience, and all that.
Correct.
So what all these other Ethereum killers are essentially doing is to say that decentralization narrative, like I don't know how many validators there are on Bitcoin and Ethereum. I need to check, but something like Terra has only 130, AVAX has 786.
Okay. I get your points.
Yeah.
I only have around half an hour.
Yeah,
so let me just give one final point.
Sure,
I
can.
wanted to talk about this because it also ties into this actually,
Yep.
which was the various types of luxury goods. And oddly, it ties into this, but I can't go the full stretch. But what's going to happen? But what I'm going to just say is this. So what happened with the proponent of one thing the internet really changed is that it really, really taught people data is not the next gold. Data is not the next oil. The next oil is human attention.
Yep. Agree.
Okay, so the internet allowed people to really monetize human attention. So if you look at just a simple one, people like Logan Paul would be a gas station attendant if not for the internet that allowed him to monetize attention like crazy. And if you think about that little child, the 4-year-old boy who reviews toys for a living and then he makes like 15 minutes. That is precisely, like you think about it, every single parent in the world is putting their child and forcing them to watch YouTube because they're too tired. And that is the monetizable attention that you want. The child points and says, I want that toy. So now, what happened with this internet is that attention is obviously extremely non-linear and internet makes it a lot more non-linear. So for example, a lot of brands like Rolex become hyper brands. If I bring you back 20 years ago and you ask how many people really know Rolex, I would say a significant, more than 50% of the population won't know what Rolex is.
Yep.
Today, everybody knows what the hell a Rolex is. You can ask an auntie in Kampong, Malawat, wherever, they will know. So brands become hyper brands, while for new brands to pop up is easier than ever, but for them to die down is also easier than ever, etc. So this was the question that I was asking myself. If you understand the fact that human attention has a value, you would understand that crypto has a value as well, because crypto, nothing will ever change the fact that if, let's say tomorrow interest rates goes up to 30% and then Bitcoin drops to $2,000, let's say, and then interest rates maintain at that level for quite some time, then let's say 20 years from now, for some reason, let's say Bitcoin is still there and then the government drops interest rates to 0%, I guarantee you first thing to go up will be Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't change the fact that human attention is aware of this, etc. Okay. So I was talking with my friend. I said, okay, if you're willing to invest in LVMH because it is now a hyper brand, and let's say I cut LVMH price to half and you invest in it because it's a hyper brand, and then I ask you, what makes you think this thing will continue to make this amount of money? And you just go, well, it has a mind share of people and people associate LVMH to this and therefore they want to own it. Okay? And therefore I will invest in it. If that's the case, why not buy Bitcoin? Then it keeps quiet. Because that's really the difficult answer to answer, and that's also for me. So I guess for me, the question is just like, if you're going to invest in cryptocurrencies in general, you want to look at where the human attention is in terms of proportion and can it go higher? And if you're talking about excluding use case, but use case, like for example, if we're talking about globalized e-wallet, I mean, first is that you need to assume that people, let's say you have a globalized e-wallet that links fiat to crypto, okay? And not just one crypto, but various coins. Let's say you need at least like 20 coins, I suppose. Now, for this thing to be accepted everywhere else, first thing it needs to do is that you need to be able to sell this coin into any fiat currency you want in the world, and then use that fiat currency and go directly from exchange to vendor. And so you still have to use the MasterCard Visa. Unless you go and be like, this vendor needs to accept anything that needs to accept non-crypto. They need to accept Solana or I mean, in theory, the first step where you can go from you can go from like coin to cash, you can do it via a Coinbase app, right?
Yep.
It's just a matter of the app to cash.
Yep.
Where via Visa, that's a bit difficult because the Coinbase does not have Visa linkages themselves. So it's more like to move to your bank account, etc. But so the next step is that you need to go, okay, this country needs to accept crypto as a main currency. Well, that is like telling every single government in the world to give up on your own currency.
Yep.
And to give up power on your own currency, because there's no country that will ever do that unless your currency is shit. So which is currently the countries that do crypto today? Venezuela, and then that guy, San Marino.
El Salvador.
El Salvador, sorry.
Yep.
And then all these hyperinflation countries. So in those countries, yes, I will perfectly understand why they would ignore their own currencies. But, like I said, I have no idea. This is too complex of a topic. The world is changing too much. Interest rates could go up and go down by factors of 10. Yeah.
All right, man. Look, thank you so much once again. Always a pleasure chatting with you. Right? Like without your blog now, where can people find you? Or do you want to be found at all?
You can find me on my blog. My email is still there. And then people can send me a message on email. I take a while to respond these days because I don't open the email much, but I do respond at some point.
All right, man.
Great.
Any fun?
No.
All right, man. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Looking forward to next sessions as always.
Yeah.
And guys, again, like this sort of content, please share it with your friends and family. Give us a like, comment, and subscribe. Click on the bell so that you know when new videos come out for you. And see you in the next pod.
Stay safe, guys.